the international. And oh, yeah, like the dude just said, solid conservative and just plain right. Well, welcome to Thankful Thursday. I'm thankful. Are you thankful? We got a sound effect for that. Hit it, man.
You got to be more thankful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. You're a gentleman and a scholar.
We thank you so much for this bountiful harvest of Domino's, KFC, and the always delicious Taco Bell.
Have you said thank you once?
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, JP's on the board. Thank you for pushing the button. I'm thankful for you.
Well, thank you for everything.
I'm glad. I'm glad of it.
I'm thankful that you're thankful.
I'm thankful that I'm back today. So yesterday, by the way, my apologies in advance. Sometimes you can't see life coming, right? I had legal duties for a client yesterday morning. And what you think is going to wind up being a 2 to 3 hour trial turning into 9 hours. And the judge says, let's go all day long. You just go, yes, Your Honor. And so that's what we did. So my apologies. We went ahead and did a replay. I thought about just cutting JP loose. I thought I can't just dump on him 1 hour before the show starts because I didn't even really know till 1 o'clock.
Yeah, I mean, it was like 1:30 when I got the call.
So hello. By the way, I won't be there. Anyway, I appreciate y'all's patience. Thank you so much for remaining with us. But nonetheless, we got a great show laid on for you today. So coming up at the beginning of hour number 2, I got a guy coming in studio who's been on the show before, but he's also got a thread of connection to the show. So a guy named Chris May, longtime friend of mine, actually has a ministry to Ukraine. He just got back from Ukraine. Zelenskyy is meeting tomorrow with Trump. I look at this and go, coincidence? No. But nonetheless, what I'm saying is I want to get a on-the-ground view of what life is like in Ukraine right now. And our friend Chris May is coming in the studio to talk about it. Oh, by the way, for those of y'all that have been with us for a while, Chris May is actually Boomer's daddy. So stand by for that. Chris May, beginning hour number 2. And then beginning hour number 3, our brethren, Jeff Poor, who is often on us with the Grand Council, chief editor of 1819 News and host of his own show down in South Alabama. Jeff Poor will be on with me to talk about some things related to high school athletics because the sports mafia, y'all. Wow. Anyway, all that to say, I still got a triple dipper, so hit it, man.
The Triple Dipper. 3 stories you've got to know.
That's right. The Triple Dipper, 3 stories, 3 themes, if you will, that you got to know as we run today's show. First out the gate, Trump world. Oh, baby. It's just Trump's world, and we all walk in it right now. And I tell you what, the world leaders left and right are having to basically respond to America again. Isn't that refreshing? But yeah, what is happening right now on the world stage is nothing short of amazing. Think about the fact that just 10 months ago, Joe Biden was still in office. And look at what's happening now. It's a whole new world. It's actually walking around right now. It feels a little bit like Trump world. We'll talk about that as number 1 on the Triple Dipper. And then number 2, the Alabama High School Athletic Association. Listen, I call them the sports mafia. They have got the most self-aggrandized, just absolute, like lofty view of themselves of anybody I've ever seen. The Alabama High School Athletic Association is basically they determine themselves to be the little g god of all things athletic sports or sports in Alabama. We'll talk about it and the new developments as of yesterday's meeting, number 2 on the Triple Dipper. And then number 3, assuming we can get to it, we got to talk about what's still happening up in D.C. with all the shutdown shinola. So the Schumer shutdown shinola is getting pretty thick, and we'll talk about that as number 3 on the Triple Dipper. All right, let me jump on into today's Rightside Way opening monologue, and I'll remind you guys, as always, that Stan McDonald is the daily sponsor of the Rightside Way. Stan McDonald, practicing attorney at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee in Huntsville, and longtime conservative. He is indeed the sponsor of the Rightside Way, and I'll tell you more about Stan in just a minute. So let me start by just reminding y'all that in case you didn't see it, just a couple of days ago, President Trump awarded Charlie Kirk the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And it was awarded posthumously, obviously, but it was also so well-deserved. You see, Charlie Kirk, he stood for freedom. And I'm talking spiritually, politically, and culturally. And he was a difference maker. He was a leader, he was an innovator, and he was an agent of positive change. The Presidential Medal of Freedom is actually the highest award able to be bestowed on a civilian in our nation. It's the unilateral decision of the president himself as to who gets it. It's a big deal. And there have been several others that have received it over the years that I really respect. People like Ronald Reagan, Rush Limbaugh, Neil Armstrong, Jesse Owens, Norman Rockwell, just to name a few. And since it's a president's choice, then you can imagine that Democrats and Republicans give it to some that one side or the other might not care for. But there's times, too, when someone receives it, nobody can argue. People like Martin Luther King or Joe DiMaggio or Mother Teresa or Billy Graham. But there was another one that I want to focus on for a minute. I loved his work. He was a master storyteller. He had a voice that was very recognizable. Something about his voice also made any word he said somehow sound more meaningful. But he also said words that would have been meaningful no matter what, really, because of their intent and because of what was behind them. And that man, who was also a Presidential Medal of Freedom Award winner, was the late, great Paul Harvey. Now, commentator Paul Harvey, he had an amazing way with words, but it was also his voice. Like I said, something about his ability to deliver his thoughts and opinions with a resonating voice that sounded like the everyman and a leader all at the same time. And he had some great moments in time when he grabbed a singular issue and he painted it with words in such a way that it crystallized the topic and made it suddenly seem like one of the most interesting or dynamic or absolutely important things the listener had ever heard of. He'd often told stories when he made his points, and he rarely spoke more than about 10 minutes. He often ended his time by saying, "And now you know the rest of the story." And he knew that he'd been given a platform, and so he did not waste his time. For nearly 60 years, Paul Harvey was carried on over 1,200 radio stations and 400 American Forces Network stations and featured in over 300 newspapers, and he reached as many as 24 million people a day. He died in the year 2009 at the age of 91, but he was broadcasting up until almost the end. And 1 year before he died, President George W. Bush awarded him the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And he had some amazing moments on the air, many of which are forgotten, but some of his messages and monologues have actually transcended time, like a couple of them that are super famous. The one was called "If I Were the Devil," or another one called "God Made a Farmer." But in 1968, Paul Harvey gave a moment to us that served as a warning, as a prediction of what would happen if we did not learn from history. And it was spot on, maybe more so as we watch today's headlines. It was a monologue that Paul Harvey called "We Were Warned, Freedom to Chains." So in just 9 minutes, Harvey unfolded an immense warning to people of America about the fate of our nation if we allowed socialism and progressivism to take root in our government and our society. And in Paul Harvey's words, he described the great nations of history who had faded away, not because they were defeated on the field of battle, but because they allowed themselves to decay from within. You can watch the headlines today and you can read the script or listen to the archived recording of Paul Harvey talking about the very idea of allowing our freedoms to be bound up in chains of self-absorption or socialism or collectivism. You can actually look around, you can see it happening. What Paul Harvey said in 1968 creates the verbal imagery of what we see right now in the year 2025. So let me read you a few key portions and see if this doesn't strike a chord with you. At one point, he said, "Ours is not the first good government to arise on the world stage. There have been several, Rome and Spain and Greece and China and others, and each enjoyed about 150 years at its zenith, and that's just about our time in the New World, and then each decayed away. And not one of them was ever destroyed by anybody else's marching legions. Each one of them rotted away morally, socially, culturally, economically, simultaneously." He said, "You know, one of the most cruel paradoxes of history is this. Because each was a good government, it bore bountiful fruit, and when it bore bountiful fruit, the people got fat. And when they got fat, they got lazy. And when they got lazy, they began to absolve themselves of personal responsibility and turn over to the government to do for them things which they traditionally had been doing for themselves." All right, me talking again. You can see that right now, can't you? That's Paul Harvey saying back in 1968 what we've been saying on this show now for the last several years. That phrase, strong men create good times and good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times and then hard times create good men. Well, there's a bounty we have here. We do. We have so much. And too often we have a society, though, that comes to expect so much that they forget to create more. Y'all, we can only consume to a point, at which point we begin to eat away at ourselves. In that same monologue, Paul Harvey also went on to say this. He said, "At first, there appears to be nothing wrong with asking your government to perform some extra service for you. But if you ask government for extra services, then government, in order to perform its increasing functions, has to get bigger. And as government gets bigger, in order to support its increasing size, it has to tax the individual more. And so the individual gets littler. And to collect the increased taxes requires more tax collectors. And so the government gets bigger. And in order to pay the additional tax collectors, it has to tax the individual more. So the government gets bigger and the individual gets littler, and the government gets bigger and the individual gets littler, until the government is all powerful and the individual is hardly anything at all. And the government then is all powerful and the people are just cattle. All right, me talking again. We can see that right now, can't we? We can see it in local, state, and federal government. Democrats and socialists are still propping up and proposing some of the largest tax increases in U.S. history. Why? Because they need more money to feed the insatiable appetite of government. And it happens right here at home. In the Republican-controlled Alabama House of Representatives just a couple of years ago, a bill was debated to consider raising the online sales tax. Why? I mean, we're operating our state government right now at a massive surplus. Why would they need more? Well, I guess when government has a role, it's largely the consumer of private production. And if government wants to do more, then like Paul Harvey said, government, regardless of whether it has a surplus now, still goes after more, demanding your surplusage so it can have its own surplusage. And I would be suggesting to you that we be mindful of any government that demands surplusage, but never seems to have a tax relief plan to go along with it. So if we are indeed cattle, like Paul Harvey said, well, keep in mind, cattle are used for one thing. They are used to support the appetites of those who claim to own the cattle. But in his classic Paul Harvey style, he didn't leave it on a depressing note. He didn't. He reminded us who we are. He reminded us that there is still time to correct the course. He warned us that we will get what we deserve if we don't make some changes and remember those who went before us to build the greatness of America. And he said this in his closing. He said, when the early American pioneer first turned his eyes toward the West, there were only Indian trails or traces as they were called, and for him to follow on through the wilderness. Well, sir, when that early pioneer turned his eyes toward the West, he didn't demand that somebody else look after him. He didn't demand a free education. He didn't demand a guaranteed rocking chair at the evening. He didn't demand that somebody else take care of him when he got old or got ill. There was an old-fashioned philosophy in those days that a man was supposed to provide for his own and for his own future. And he didn't demand a maximum amount of money for a minimum amount of work, nor did he expect pay for no work at all. Paul Harvey went on to say, come to think of it, a man in those days didn't demand anything. That hard-handed pioneer just looked out there at the rolling plains stretching away to the tall green mountains. And then he lifted his eyes up to the blue skies and he said, thank you, God. Now I can take it from here. Well, that spirit's not dead in our country, Harvey said. It's dormant. It's been discredited in some circles. It's been driven underground, but it isn't dead. And me talking again, I agree with Paul Harvey. There's a reason why he was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, because he preached freedom. And we have to correct course. We cannot become fat and idle. We need to look at our history and become more determined than ever not to allow ourselves as a people, as a nation, as a culture to just merely slip away because we were content to be content. We can still fix this by the grace of God and the will of strong people who are intent on building good times. And I'm thankful for the current administration that is restoring us to an era of common sense and a golden age of America, we've been calling it. Because if we don't go down that road, if we don't fix these things, then we will just be another byline in human history instead of being the ones who actually make the history. And like the great Paul Harvey once said, we will get what we deserve. And now you know the rest of the story. So take the chains off our freedom is what I say. Act like America. And that's a wrap for the Right Side Way. Well, there you have it. And yes, Paul Harvey was a commentating hero of mine. I can remember listening to him as a kid. I always thought his stories were cool. But every once in a while, I read something like what he wrote there that I just referenced for you, and I remind myself the man was an American hero. He was a genius. He was a commentator like no other. He was worthy of the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. Prison. You were on the run for a while, and
Sure.
then they caught you swinging on a rope out the window trying to get away from a drug bust.
Yeah.
And I am of the understanding that at some point, Dog the Bounty Hunter was offered the opportunity to track you down, and he declined.
Yes, and I don't think he declined. I don't think he based off of. Well, so I'll just tell the story. That's
You
what
have
we
to
do.
now
That's
that
what we
I've
do. We
asked
have to
about
tell
it.
stories. Yeah. So here I am. I've now racked up 6 felonies. That 6th felony was the doozy. Okay, and the 6th felony was, I was already out on bond. I was already on probation, and I'd been up for 3 or 4 days. found out one of these guys who had informed the cops about some legal activity that I was involved with, found out that he had just come into some money and he owed me money, and he also narked on me, right? And so in that world, you don't do that. Those are the rules, okay? You don't do that. If you want to play in this society, you don't do that. Now, a lot of people did, but there was an enforcement mechanism called me, okay? And if you're going to do that to me, I'm going to find you and I'm going to hurt you. That was the way it worked. And he wasn't the only one that I did that to, but he was the one that ended up telling the cops again. So I went to his house. I'd been up for 3 days, strung out on meth, pound on his door. He answers the door. I said, he's like, hey, man, what's going on? I just immediately said, why'd you tell on me? And I didn't tell on you. I walked into his house, pushed him. Why'd you tell on me? I didn't tell on you. And I just started to beat him relentlessly. And the guy that I was with, so the way that it reads in the charges, and it's because they only wanted me to go down. They didn't care about the other guy that was with me. I was their target, okay, for the cops, law enforcement. I was the one running all these drug rings and theft rings and motorcycle theft rings and all this stuff. So they were after me. And I wasn't going to tell on the guy that was with me, but this is what actually happened versus what if you read the articles online and the charges and stuff. I was tasing him and beating him and tasing him with a taser and beating him, trying to get him to admit that he told on me. Well, the guy that was with me had a blackjack, which is it's not makeshift, like you can buy them. Yeah. It's got like a mechanical spring inside of it with a heavy piece of lead with leather wrapped around it. Yeah. And he hit him square in the forehead with it. Boom, his head explodes. Blood goes everywhere. Was not the intention of that visit, okay? My intention, I actually was friends with the guy and liked the guy, but he had broken the rules. And so I was in there to make sure that he understood that you don't do this. The guy I was with cracked his head open. Blood went everywhere. And I'm like, well, at this point, we're done, okay? Like, this is over. And after he got hit in the head with that, he admitted that he told on me. That happened. But that, again, that was not the... It was not the intention of this meeting was to go that serious and that far, but it did. And once it did, I just started grabbing computers and anything that was of value. I told his brother, I said, look, if you guys don't pay us, pay me the money that you owe me, I'm going to be back, and that's going to be you. And I walked out. And so they hit me with attempted murder, aggravated robbery, and extortion. That night I got arrested again.
That's go-away charges right there.
Those are go-away charges, yeah, for a long time. And it was my 6th felony. Right. So my 6th time I've been arrested and charged in separate cases. And so I got arrested that night. I went to court basically, and they dropped the attempted murder down to first degree because it didn't fit. And so my arraignment, I don't know what they call it. You're a lawyer. I'm not. Although after being in prison for a little while, you actually kind of turn into one. But they dropped it to first degree assault. And so I was charged with first degree assault, aggravated robbery and extortion and a slew of other things, but those were the heaters. And so I'm in there for 2 weeks, and I get bonded out again. And so now I'm out on several $100,000. No, I think it was like $135,000 worth of bonds, if I remember correctly.
Who posted bond?
There's so many rabbit trails I could go all the way down. I just don't know how interesting they are. There's this girl, I think her name was Lisa, that she was just infatuated with me and thought the world of me. And she went and used a credit card to buy a bunch of Xbox 360s that were out at the time, and then sold them and got the money to bond me out.
No kidding.
No one's ever got that story, Phil. You're the first that got that story.
Scoop.
That's that question. There you go. But yeah, I ended up bonding out and knew immediately that if I go to court, I'm going to prison for the rest of my life. So I'm not going to court, which now makes me a fugitive because I missed my court date, right? I'm on the run. And the plan was, I had a friend, Spider. He and I were supposed to, and Spider's a very bad dude, like very, very bad, Hispanic guy who's part of the Sereno gang. And we were supposed to go down to California with his people and then go into Mexico. That's what they do on the movies. We felt like it was a good idea. Only problem is we never got around to doing it. And so I ended up on a number of occasions, the cops ended up finding where I was, but they didn't have a warrant and they weren't sure. And so there's a couple different ways that I was able to get away when I was on the run. Yeah. And that infuriated them. Okay.
This is how long? Like several weeks?
Yeah, it was about 2 or 3 weeks. Yep. And so you had, at the time, there was
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just just saving the world one soundbite at a time. All right, sitting here in the studio right now with my cup of Java in my hand, ready to get going on some topics. But first, I got to tell you about attorney Stan McDonald. So yeah, Stan McDonald, longtime practitioner of law in North Alabama, partner at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee. He's a 30-year veteran in the practice of law. He's also a longtime conservative, y'all. He's like an OG ruffian. The man's been in the mix, in the fray, in the trenches on all the things that Rightside ruffians care about for years. So that being said, Stan McDonald, he has represented his clients in literally thousands of real estate transactions over the years. I like to say that if Stan McDonald's on your side, you can imagine you're going to have no greater friend. Likewise, your adversaries would have no greater foe. I mean, he can stand up for you in any local, state, or federal court. So here's the thing. You need an attorney in North Alabama. I'm going to give you his phone number. You ready? Stan McDonald. The law firm is Wilmer and Lee. He's an America First family man, and his phone number is 256-533-0202. That's Stan McDonald, 256-533-0202. Tell him you heard about it on Rightside Radio. And then, no representation made. The quality of legal services is at all bad. You know, why would I advertise a bad lawyer? I mean, that's just the way it is. He's a good lawyer. I like him. Stan McDonald. Whoop, whoop. Nice. Well played. Text lines are open, 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. Text it, call it, same number for both. You had some comments over there on social media too. What you got?
Oh, well, first, John from Huntsville again.
Sure.
Happy Thankful Thursday, everybody. And we got Bruce on the X live stream said, awesome monologue, Phil. It's amazing the words and wisdom that we can learn from Paul Harvey.
Isn't that true? Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Bruce, thanks for listening. I got some over here. Let me see what I got. Mike from Coxie. Mike from Coxie, Alabama says, Colonel Phil, Paul Harvey also said that just by turning left, the world has gone in circles. Okay. Jeff from Indiana says, hey, Phil, while Paul Harvey didn't have a political affiliation, he was a conservative, thank goodness. Said, I wonder who would have been his equal on the left. And I'm afraid he's right. We're going to get what we deserve in New York City, and I feel sorry for the collateral damage that the smart people in New York are going to have to face. Yeah, and Jeff, I saw this morning, I'm taking a little heart with the idea that, I mean, believe it or not, I'm pulling for Andrew Cuomo. Mm-hmm. I mean, go figure. The idea that I'd be pulling for Andrew Cuomo, but right now they say that in the polling that Cuomo is closing the gap.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw any of the clips on Mamdani on Fox News yesterday. I just watched that and I'm just like, God, this guy's such a good politician. It's like, it's really deflating because it's like his policies are so bad, but the way he fluffs it up and can lie straight to your face, it's like, I see how he's got a lot of people fooled. So yeah.
He could say, I really appreciate China's efforts to depopulate the world, and I intend to have a one-child policy in New York City. And it's going to be wonderful for us because we'll have more to eat, and everybody will feel good about it. There'll be better air to breathe.
Exactly.
And he would look at it and smile at you with that schmarmy smile he does. He that smile never leaves his face.
Nope.
Like he's excited to be there. And I'm thinking, my gosh, go Cuomo is what I'm saying.
Amen.
Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. Folks, Phil Williams here. I want to remind you that Inspire Advisors is one of our sponsors, and they are doing amazing work. Look, I know this audience. You're the kind of folks who believe in standing up for your principles. You're good stewards of your resources. But what if the companies you were investing in don't reflect your values at all? Well, that's why you need to meet Paul Breyer and his team at Inspire Advisors. Because Inspire Advisors, they are experts in the field of biblically responsible investing. They can help you grow your bottom line while also be proud of what companies you're investing in. Inspire Advisors, check them out. Their website, www.moneypatternwealth.com, and tell them you heard about it on Rightside Radio.
Officer Gold Branson, which were with Colorado Springs Police Department. But then you had Sergeant O'Driscoll, who was the head of the Fugitive Task Force and Crime Prevention Unit.
You still remember their names?
Yes, I do. And there's a story in that too. This would have been 2007.
Oh.
Yeah, and so Sergeant O'Driscoll and his team, not only was he on the Fugitive Task Force, he was part of the Crime Prevention Unit. So even before I was a fugitive, both Morgan Gold Branson and Sergeant O'Driscoll and his team, they were dedicated to bringing me in and taking me down. Okay, because of the threat that I posed in running these crime rings or whatever, and but the Crime Prevention Unit and Fugitive Task Force. It was ran by Sergeant O'Driscoll. They ended up, they have like unlimited budget, work with the feds, all this other stuff. And so they were on me. And so I got away a couple times. And finally, June 19th, 2007, I am in what we deemed my safe house, and Spider had given me a nylon rappelling rope to tie to the bottom of this 70s retro recliner. And he's like, if you got to get out, you go, because the front door is, there's a hallway in these apartments, and then you go from the hallway into the apartment, and the only way out would be down the window, out the window and down on the ground, and it's third story. And I'm like, I'm never going to use that. That's crazy, but I did. Every 18 inches, I tied a double knot, so I could climb like that. And, I woke up June 19th, 2007, not thinking anything, just another day of being on the run. And I was in my living room.
One of your interviews, you said you woke up at 3 p.m.
Yeah, it was that afternoon. And it was that afternoon. I was, again, smoking weed, doing drugs. And, your circadian rhythm gets a little off in that situation. And so woke up that afternoon. It's the weird thing that you remember. I was cooking bratwurst and watching the Chappelle Show. And I looked out the window, and the way that it's set up, there's an apartment building here. And every year I go to Colorado Springs and I take my family. And this year I took my 15-year-old son, and he's heard me tell this story a million times. And I'm like, here's the bill. He's like, this is just like the building you said. I said, yeah, no, it's because this is where it happened. Okay, like I'm telling you. And we go and we look, and there's an apartment building right here. This is the apartment building I'm in. And I saw the front end of a cop car sticking out. And I knew, okay, they're here. They're here. And so I kind of frantically, I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? Well, then all of a sudden I hear boom, boom, boom. Colorado Springs police, open up. They kick in the door. And I look, it wasn't my door. So I said, they don't know which apartment I'm in. They're kicking in every single door in the apartment on the third floor. All they knew is I was on the third floor. And so you've been in Afghanistan and Iraq. They're clearing rooms as though this was Afghanistan trying to find me, okay, in an apartment complex.
Yeah.
Boom. Okay. I'm like, okay, well, I look at the rope and this is my only option. And so I kick the screen out, throw my backpack out with all my stuff. And the only piece of furniture in the whole place was the TV and the retro recliner. Okay. That was it. And so I wrap the rope around my hand and I jump, boom. And it sticks exactly how it's supposed to. It's, wedged in the window, and I'm hanging there. Well, what I didn't know in that back parking lot, there was a surveillance van.
Oh, yeah.
That blends in with the rest of you wouldn't have known it was a cop car or whatever. It was a surveillance van. And they called it in. Someone's trying to jump out the window. I think we got our guy. And then 50 or 60 cops, they weren't going to miss me again, come swarming from the outside. Like you couldn't see them because they were right here.
So the jig was up at that point.
The jig was up. Yeah, the gun's drawn, get on the ground as though I had another option. Gravity necessitated that down was the direction I was going to go. And so I unwrapped my hand, fell, and hit the ground. Thankfully, didn't break anything. They put their knee in my back.
Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all are talking about this show. This one goes like from Huntsville back on over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about Tuscaloosa back on over to Gadsden. All the way down to that loveliest little village on the plains we call Auburn, War Eagle, and straight across the line from there to what we call, once again, Fort Benning. Big old patches of North Georgia, Mississippi all thrown in, and that's just the radio. That's just the radio footprint. Then there's all y'all out there in the whole wide world going to the World Wide Web, logging in like right now. We got even a text a minute ago. We got a video just a minute ago from one of our listeners, Keith on a tractor, sends us a picture of us. If he's out working the fields, listening to the show. Love that.
The name fits. He's Keith on a tractor. Right?
I'm saying.
As we speak.
And then, oh, by the way, all you podcasters that catch it after the fact, the bottom line is wherever you catch the show means the world to us. You're the only reason why we do this. So thank you very much. I got some more text messages. If you got any over there, let me know. I told you about Keith on a tractor. He did. He sent us a video. And I appreciate it, man. That's just that means what I got right here is a working man show. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
By golly.
There you go. Scott from Athens says, just wait till the JISA tax.
Oh,
what? What?
It's something in regards to Sharia law, because he says it will come if we don't liberate Dearbornistan and Somaliopolis.
Oh God. Okay.
It's funny, not funny.
I see it now. Yeah. Alex Mathen says surplusage. That's an absolutely gorgeous way to describe our dilemma. Thank you for reminding us of the greatness of Mr. Harvey and the possibilities that abound when you have free speech, even in a struggling nation. Thank you, my friend. Lisa from Huntsville says, great monologue. I cannot tell you how many times over the last decade or two that I have used the phrase, Rome is burning. This is the one lesson that we can't seem to learn from history. However, I'm not sure this is even taught in history anymore. As you probably know, the fall of Rome was caused for two reasons. The Roman Empire had gotten so big, there were not enough troops to guard the borders, leaving them vulnerable to invasion and moral decay within. You cannot have a civilized society without a moral basis. There was too much bread, too many circuses. Wow. Lisa, great text. That one may get the applause for the text line today. That one's so right now, Lisa, you're in the front. John from Huntsville says, Phil, spectacular monologue. Thank you, sir. Also, did you hear about the record-breaking $15 billion Bitcoin fraud scheme? I did. He says, by the way, JP is letting you know Alabama's going to crush Tennessee on Saturday, at least by 3 touchdowns.
I know what he's doing.
Yeah, you see it.
He's reverse jinxing.
It's
now
what's happening.
because he's predicted Bama would lose every game so far. So he thinks if he predicts them to win, then they'll lose.
It's a strategy.
You're not slick, John.
It's a strategy.
I'll be at the game. The last game I was at was Georgia game last year. So hopefully we'll have.
So you're going to the game?
I am.
Good seats?
I'll have to. Oh yeah, we got friends with good season ticket seats right behind the end zone. So I'll have my cigar ready. But also, part of me feels like that's a bad omen. But I gotta have it ready, just in case.
Just don't clamp down on it and start smoking that bad boy till it's all the way over.
Yes, true.
Joe in Tennessee says also Paul Harvey reported that it was not a good idea to throw open a window in Alaska and swat a Kodiak bear on the nose. Bad move. Okay. Said, fortunately, the swatter survived. Wow. Shorty from Anderson says, hey, Phil, just wanted to say what another amazing monologue. Thank you, sir. Keep up the good work. Brother, welcome back. You are well missed. Thank you very much. And then Cameron from Decatur says, happy 90th birthday to Barry McGuire. Really? Barry McGuire? 90? How about
I
that?
didn't know that either.
By the way, today is, I will say, thinking of other anniversaries. I said it on my morning drive. If you're watching social media, I do a thing every morning called Thoughts on the Morning Drive, about a minute and a half long usually. But today is the 34th anniversary of Justice Clarence Thomas being confirmed to the Supreme Court. And keep in mind, I think that what we saw with Justice Thomas's confirmation process was the precursor to the Democrats becoming character assassination experts. If you remember, when it was all said and done, Clarence Thomas actually called it a political lynching, but he made it through. And who was the person leading that charge on that character assassination attempt during his confirmation? Joe Biden. So yeah, there's a whole lot of us that are thankful that Clarence Thomas hung in there, that he didn't walk away from it, that he didn't throw up his hands in frustration. Because as somebody who considers himself a strict constructionist or an originalist on the Constitution, me personally, I am thankful to have a man like Clarence Thomas on the bench, who has, in many ways, I think, saved our republic, our constitutional republic over the years, with his conservative. He and Antonin Scalia, I think, are going to go down in history as two of the greats who sat on the bench. And
right now, as we speak, I mean, a big case in the Supreme Court right now that could change the political landscape. And then again, it depends on what they replace it with. But I mean, that's a big deal. This is a big case that they're going over right now.
So I'll say this. It's interesting because State Senator Sam Gavin just texted me personally a minute ago, and not knowing that we were going to even mention this, he said, FYI, the 11th Circuit just issued a stay in the Jefferson County redistricting case. So it makes you wonder if you've got that's 11th Circuit. So if you've got a federal circuit deciding it needs to hold off on something related to redistricting for the time being and stay the proceedings, is that an indication that they are hearing something in the arguments right now at SCOTUS on the overall, that's the Louisiana case, I believe, wasn't it? Yeah, the Louisiana redistricting case. And by the way, that Louisiana, what that case is largely dealing with is the question of the Voting Rights Act. So this is an aside. I'm going to go from memory here for a minute. But the Voting Rights Act has been something that states like Alabama have been stuck with having to deal with now for decades. And what it basically does is say, you were once a bad state. Now we got to monitor everything you do. And oh, by the way, don't you dare redraw your district lines without us deciding whether it was or was not racially motivated. And then the frustrating thing is, having been there and been a part of this process, and I'm sure Sam Gavan could attest, but the reality is we'll draw a map and they'll say too racial. So we'll redraw a map and they'll go, not enough race. What what is it? So
It's like punching jelly.
it is. It's like, yeah, and then trying to stick it to the wall.
Yeah.
So so the end result is the Voting Rights Act has become something that people like Eric Holder, who used to be the Attorney General for the Obama administration, have turned into a bludgeon. And they use it as a legal weapon now. And they go after states like Louisiana and red states like Alabama. And the only reason why, in my opinion, we have now 2 members of our U.S. delegation that are Democrat is because the Voting Rights Act, suddenly we were subject to the whims of the court at the time with a new interpretation of whether or not we were or were not racial.
Well, I don't know if you've heard any of the oral arguments so far from this case. That one was really bad. And by the way, Ketanji Brown Jackson is making a fool of herself once again in the middle of this, as you can imagine. But one attorney from the NAACP said, well, the problem we're having is that even like white Democrats, they're not even voting for black candidates. And that's a problem. And it's like, that is your argument. That is your reasoning. Like the reasons for keeping it is just like, how did this even happen in the first place? But I hope that gives me hope that it's going to get overturned.
Well, here's the other thing too. Ketanji Brown Jackson, apparently I'm reading this for the first time on foxnews.com. Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson sparked debate Wednesday when she invoked the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Yes.
During oral arguments to illustrate how the government can remedy discrimination. Basically, what she's implying, it almost appears, is that by virtue of the fact that some people's skin is black, they are in effect disabled when it comes to voting. And that's the most awful interpretation of life I've ever heard, much less the law.
Yeah.
Anyway, 3 hours of oral arguments so far in Louisiana v. Calais, which is the case on whether or not congressional maps can be drawn under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, racially, non-racially. Anyway.
Well, it's just like the DEI argument. Their arguments for it are being racist towards, certain groups of people, because they're pretty much saying that if it wasn't for this redistricting, then no white Democrats would even vote for black Democrat or for black candidates.
Yeah.
It's like, so you're pretty much saying, you're implying that black candidates are so bad that nobody's going to vote for them unless the districting is like that. They're being racist in their argument for it. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. But if we were to draw, and in fact, what's really funny is when I was there for reapportionment in the state Senate in 2011, because we had the 2010 census. So 2011, we drew the lines, came out with the maps, and there was a freak out. And we were told that we were packing. What is that? Packing. You're putting too many black people in one district. Okay. You cram them all into one. You cram them all into one to get them out of your way. So you're packing them. And then the next thing I know, we're turning around, we're fracking. What's that mean? Well, you don't have enough black people in this district over here. Well, which is it?
Yeah.
So it's the whole thing is just a jacked up mess. Anyway, I think it's also interesting too, though. No one will be able to say that today's oral arguments and whatever the resulting opinion is that comes out about Louisiana v. Calais and the redistricting, the Voting Rights Act, no one will be able to say it was a biased white-only decision.
Exactly.
Because I guarantee you, Ketanji Brown Jackson and Clarence Thomas will be on opposite sides of the opinion. They will. Because what it really boils down to is liberal versus conservative. It's not a question of race. It's a question of worldview and legal interpretation. That's what it's going to be. So there, I have spoken. We'll be watching this, and just by the way, that opinion won't come out for quite some time. They usually conduct oral arguments, and you might be 4, 5, 6 months before they get to out the opinion.
Yeah, so they were saying that hopefully it gets finished by next June. So
yeah, and by the way, it's spring to June when you start seeing the results coming out. They have an entire website called SCOTUS Watch and they typically release them on Fridays. But they're also extremely busy with the constant amount of lawfare against, Trump executive orders and that kind of thing. So there's
so much.
There's so many special calendars for the court right now.
Tariffs are still to be decided upon. There's a whole bunch of stuff.
Lots of stuff. I did not mean to go that long on all that.
I think it was good.
That's your fault.
I'm sorry.
Okay. We're going to come right back and jump on into some Trump world discussion because there's a series of announcements happening as we speak that are important. But there's also breaking news with Katie Britt standing in the Oval Office. So I'll find out what that's about during the break. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned.
Put me in the back of the cop car, and that was it. June 19th, 2007.
So I'm fascinated by two things in the story.
Sure.
One is you still remember the cops' names.
There's a story for why, but go ahead.
Well, and then I may get back to that story.
Yeah.
But the other is you take your kids and you show them exactly where this happened.
Yeah.
So we're going to get a lot into, you're obviously a different person today.
Sure.
I know the guy who did those things, but I don't know the guy who did those things
Sure.
because you're a different person. But that being said, you're pretty transparent with, and you have 7 kids, by the way.
Yeah.
You're a prolific breeder,
Yes.
but nonetheless, you've got a beautiful family, 7 kids, but you're telling them what's happened in your life.
Mm-hmm.
What's can I ask you real quick? What's their response when they hear about Dad before they knew Dad?
This is a great, it's a great platform to share the gospel with your kids, right? But the older ones, it's a warning. Proverbs talks about the fool. Dad was a fool, right? I was the epitome of the fool, and in Proverbs and really throughout the scriptures, it talks about a fool. And I didn't seek wise counsel. I didn't receive instruction. I didn't receive discipline. I didn't any of those things. I rejected all of it, and this is where I ended up. And so I don't think it's set. So I've got a 15-year-old, got a 10-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old. Okay. The 15-year-old, the 10-year-old, the 9-year-old are the ones that really wrap their minds around what I'm talking about when I talk about being in prison and, cops chasing me and that kind of stuff. The rest of the ones are younger, and they're just like, wow, Dad, you used to be bad, but now you're good. Like they don't have any, but it will eventually form like their understanding. And it's something that I want them to always know. And the thing I always point them to is like, 1, don't be the fool, receive instruction, receive wise counsel, obey God and obey your parents. But also life isn't perfect. And if you stray, you can never stray so far that God can't get you. Right. And if God saved me, he can save anybody. And that's not cliche. It's literally, let me tell you about something. But again, specifically my 15-year-old, I drive him all around Colorado Springs. There's not a corner I didn't commit a felony in that city. Okay. And I drive him and I'm like, I did this here. I did this here. I did this here. I did this here. Like, this is who I was. You need to know and understand that. Right. And so
Proverbs 19, raise up a child the way they should go.
Yep.
When they get old, they won't depart from it.
Yep.
All right, brother. So you, the jig was up. They got you. The officers whose names you still recall were a part of the task force that brought you in, and you're staring at 6 felonies prior before you even got to this point, and now you've got this stack of felonies, and you're looking at 384 years potentially.
Sure.
So you're looking at life in prison at that point.
Correct. Yeah.
But you negotiated.
Yeah.
Did you negotiate for yourself, or did your lawyer do a good job?
It's a mix, but there's a bunch between that. But yeah, it gets into mediation. But there was 9 months between then, and in those 9 months, so they take me to county jail. I'm facing 384 years in prison. At least that's how my public defender described it, because how it works, and the numbers are shaky in my head. But I have to do the math. But either way, each charge that I was charged with gets doubled because I was on probation and on bond, so they can double it. So they enhance it.
Yeah.
And then they times it. They can times it by 4 because it's the habitual criminal.
Yeah.
Right. And so I can break it all down with math or whatever. But the habitual criminal. So if you have 3 felonies, they call that. I'm not going to say what they call it. It's the B word, the little B word. And if it's 4 or more, you get they quadruple your sentence. And they call that the big B word. Okay, habitual. Anyway, so I was at 6, so I'm times 4, and then so they stack, and then they times it by 4, and then that's where that comes from.
This is state, not federal, right?
State, Colorado State. Yep, Colorado State prison.
It didn't wind up being 384 years, but you still got a pretty stiff sentence.
Got a pretty stiff sentence, and the transformation really began in county jail. So I was in county jail for 9 months, basically holding out. And that's part of your negotiations in county jail. Is like, well, I'll just sit here until you bring me a deal that I want, right? And they'll only do that for so long. But it is, some people just want to get in there and they plea and they go to prison, But I was gonna, bide my time or whatever. Well, I'm now in county jail thinking I'm gonna go do the rest of my life in prison, That's how I'm seeing this. And so I'm in there thinking I have to create this reputation of being a bad dude, so when I get to prison, people won't mess with me. And so I do, and I'm hanging out with all the wrong people in there. I catch one assault case. They put me in the hole, then send me to another unit. I'm there for a little bit. They bring in another guy that
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just making common sense like a superpower. All right, we're going to jump into Dipper number one. Coming up here after the top of the hour, we've got a guy who's going to be in studio with us who is a longtime personal friend, and he's also been on the show before, and he's also, for those of y'all that remember Boomer, is Boomer's dad. But Chris May will be on with us here shortly, and Chris May actually has a ministry to Ukraine and just got back from there, very close to the front lines, drone attacks in and around his area, doing things for folks on the ground in the country. And we'll talk about what he saw while he was there, because leading into my topic here, Trump world, the announcement was made today that Trump has now established a second summit with Vladimir Putin, which will be held in Budapest, Hungary. I think date to be determined. But coming up in the near future, as I understand, November, is that what I heard? Are they working on it for November?
I believe, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, there will be another Trump-Putin summit. Apparently, Trump spoke to Putin today, and that's significant. Zelenskyy will be in the White House tomorrow. I'll jump into more of that in a minute, but I got to say there's a couple things happening in what I would call Trump world that I want to make sure I point out. You remember we talked about Venezuela. All right, here's something that's flying under the radar a little bit. Story broke this morning on just a couple of news outlets. I picked it up at Washington Post. Phil, did you go to the Washington Post? I did. I go these places so you don't have to. But the Washington Post and the New York Times are both reporting that there are Army Special Operations helicopters training in and around the area near Venezuela. What does near Venezuela even mean? Well, keep in mind, Venezuela is not that far away. We have Puerto Rico, where we have a base. We've got, the Keys. We got all kinds of places that are, within a stone's throw, if you will. If there are special operations aviation assets training and conducting training, that doesn't mean anything necessarily unusual. We have the U.S. Army Special Operations Dive Center in the Keys. We have any number of places that are, I'll just say different. Hurlburt Field, you've got MacDill Air Force Base, where SOCOM is based. All that to say, there are some, though, speculating that what we're watching is a buildup. There are some who are saying that what we're watching right now is a precursor to a potential on-the-ground action in Venezuela by the Trump administration's military assets. He also, by the way, himself just said in the last few days, he's authorized the CIA to take on the boots on the ground activity to the next level inside Venezuela. All right. So the pressure upon the Maduro regime has gotten very real. Maduro is no longer being given carte blanche to be the head of the Cartel de las Soles, which is the cartel of the sun, which is believed to be a cartel run by Maduro and other top government officials for the trafficking of drugs through Venezuela into international waters and into the United States. So Trump world, it's a whole different place right now. Whole different. He also just blew up another drug boat a couple of days ago. Was it yesterday? Day before?
I believe it was 2 days ago.
Yeah. So another drug trafficking boat went poof in the water. And yeah, it's a heck of a time. I imagine that there are guys being told, you're going to carry the next boatload. They're going, I think I'm busy that day.
I was about to say, how many times does one have to blow up for them to be like, guys, let's wait till things cool down a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we just do the flight thing? I don't want to take the boat anymore.
Yeah.
Can we just ship it by UPS? Can we do something different? Anyway, yeah, there's that. Other things happening in and around the world. I will just tell you the situation on the ground right now with Hamas and Israel. We are still in a place where the detente has been reached. They are still not shooting at each other per se, but there have been some pretty significant moments occurring inside of Gaza right now. Not the least of which is that Hamas is now fighting with other Palestinian factions. What? Yeah, you have a group called the Dagesh, which is a tribal group, and they are opposed to Hamas. And my one source that I read said that they are also in some ways been allying themselves with Israel. There are people inside the Palestinian population that are sick to death of Hamas because they know what Hamas does to them. It doesn't bring them any help. It brings them hurt. And so Hamas is struggling with its own power base. On top of that, though, you have to wonder what's going to happen with Hamas disarming, because that is the last piece that I have heard has not been fully agreed to yet. Hamas has agreed not to take political power and be the power broker in terms of holding office in Palestine or in Gaza, but they have not yet also agreed to disarm.
That is the main thing that Hamas has made clear they will not agree to by any means. They even said, even if we're not the governing, party or the governing faction of Gaza, that we're still going to be the militia of Gaza. Yeah. So it's, that's where my optimism is very cautious, because it's like Hamas has not agreed to lay down arms or anything. Like the hostage deal, historic in its own right, but it's just like until Hamas agrees to lay down their arms and walk away, I feel like the fighting is going to start again eventually. That's just my opinion.
Well, we'll see. I was on Jeff Poor's show this morning. We talked about this very thing, and I told him, I said, one of my concerns is, can we keep peace and order in place through the midterms, our midterms?
Yeah.
I say that not because our midterms are directly, but they are. I could see where Hamas might try to do things to gin up on the street sentiment with, its protesters waving flags again right before an election. So we'll see. Hey, by the way, a moment ago, breaking news, Senator Katie Britt is now at the podium inside the Oval Office speaking. And what they're apparently speaking about is Trump has just issued an executive order about IVF treatments, making them more affordable and available to people who are struggling with having children. And that's very cool, because it is extremely expensive. And one of the things he pointed out in his speech during the break, I heard it, is that our country pays oftentimes 700% than more than other countries do for the same drugs for IVF treatment. That's got to stop. Apparently it is going to stop. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Coming up next, we'll be jumping back into Trump world, and my friend Chris May coming to studio. We'll be right back.
Told on one of my friends, and I had to go beat him up really, really bad. Caught another assault case. So I caught 2 assault cases in county jail. So on top of all my other stuff, I caught 2 more assault cases. They were misdemeanor assaults, but they're still assault cases. And they put me in administrative segregation after that. So they're like, okay, you don't play nice with others.
That's solitary, basically.
Solitary,
right?
Correct. Exactly what it is. Yep. Solitary confinement. You're in a cell by yourself for 23 hours a day. You get an hour out to make a phone call and take a shower, maybe do some push-ups or whatever, and you go back to your cell. That's what you get. And I was in there for about 4 months. Okay. And so it was 9 months total, 5 months out, 4 months in ADSEG or solitary. And in that stay in solitary, God began to open my eyes. I don't believe he saved me yet, but he opened my eyes to the fact it was my fault that I was in there. And this is huge. I was just reading a Rick Burgess's new book last night, because I'm going to interview him later today. But it that was one of the chapters when it talks about just rugged accountability. Like you have to take accountability for your actions if you're ever going to repent. And this was the beginning of me realizing, because up to that point, I blame my mom for my circumstances. I blame my dad. I blame the judge. I blame the cops. Da 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 da.
No more victim.
Exactly. And but what was wild though, I really believed I was a victim. Like, I wasn't just saying that to get out of trouble. I really believed it, which is weird. But God, in his mercy, opened my eyes like, no, dummy, this is your fault. Sure, does your mom and your dad play a role? And oh, yeah. But your choices got you here. They didn't beat that guy up. They didn't jump out the window. They didn't, sell drugs. They didn't do those things. You did those things. Yeah. And so when I realized that my bad choices created the bad circumstances, that was extremely liberating, because what it meant is that I was free to make good choices that would then create good circumstances. And it was like this epiphany that went off in my brain. And so as much as you can in a cell by yourself, I began to start taking ownership of my thoughts, feelings, behaviors, decisions, all that kind of stuff. So much so that my family really began to like, because I would have a phone call a week. That's all they would give me. Not that, like, I could call them every day on my hour out if I wanted, but my family would pick up the phone once a week. They'd cut me off. I'd burned every bridge.
Wow.
And in those weekly phone calls, my family started to notice a huge change in my attitude.
Who'd you call?
My grandma Barb.
Okay.
Yep. And I would call my grandma Barb, and usually it would be on Sunday night, and my mom would be over there, and my brother would be over there, and and so they'd pass the phone around or whatever, and I'd talk. But they specifically, my grandma Barb is like, something's changed in him, and everyone, and a lot of people in the family told grandma she was crazy. You just got a soft spot for Brian, whatever. But she's like, no, I feel like something's changed, and
Is that your dad's mom or your mom's
that's
mom?
my mom's mom.
Okay.
Yep. Meanwhile, my dad's mom, the one that was teaching Sunday school for Miss Kay, Scott Beeson, when he interviewed me, said, who was praying for you? It was a good question. I said, well, Betty Dawson was. And lots of credit goes to her for that. But Grandma Barb, she began to really believe in me and believe that there was a change that had happened, so much so that she, so in this time period, that 4 months that I'm in there, I guess about 3 months into my ADSEG stay, my public defender came and said, okay, Brian, the district attorney, she was like really excited to give me this deal like it was a good one.
Your attorney was?
Yes, a public pretender. And she comes and says, Brian, this is great. If you sign this deal, you're only going to get 32 years with a crime of violence. And I'm like, amazing. When you're 23, 384 and 32, there's not a lot of difference, right? And so I was not real excited about that. So I called my grandma and I said, I'm going to prison for the rest of my life. Because the way it works in Colorado, it's way different than it is in Alabama. On a 32-year sentence with a crime and violence sentence enhancer, which is another way that you have a crime of violence, so they stack your sentences, then they aggravate it, and then they multiply it. So it's basically they're just going to throw everything they can at you. If you go to trial, and she explains this to me, if you go to trial, this is what they can do to you. But I tell my grandma I'm going to prison for the rest of my life, and she reaches out to these attorneys. She's got a little bit of money. She doesn't got a lot of money. She's just reaching out to these attorneys. They're like 60 grand, 120 grand, 150 grand to represent, he's got 6 felonies.
I'm underbilling myself apparently as an attorney.
Yes. Well, if you get into criminal law and you got a guy with 6 felonies, you should probably charge him. But they're like, and she's like, well, I can't afford any of that. And I said, go talk to Jeff Barker. Jeff Barker's got a great reputation for being kind of an up and coming new lawyer who's just really, really good. And she goes and sits down with him, and he's like, look, best I can do is $10,000. And if he goes to trial, I need another 10. My grandma says, I don't have another 10. He's like, well, he ain't going to trial, so I'm not that worried about it. Right. So he's like, okay, $10,000. And so he ends up becoming my attorney. And we're a little bit long for him. So I'm going to go into some of this because this is really cool. I've never told this part of the story in any media hits. And so, now I'm up against the wall when I try to retain this attorney. The next day, I've got to take my plea or I've got to go to trial. So they've got witnesses showing up for my trial that day. So if I don't take the plea, I go to trial.
You're down to knuckle dragging.
Knuckle dragging. And you're an attorney. You kind of know how some of this stuff works. Yeah. The judge says, you don't get a new attorney, buddy. No, he's not your attorney. Your attorney is this lady, and you either sign the plea or you go to trial. I'm like, my grandma's like, my new supposed to be attorney's like, and the public defender comes over and she's like, hey, I don't know how this happened, but one of the witnesses in the case got stuck in traffic or whatever, and she's not going to be able to be here. She has to get back to work. And so they had to delay it, and they punted for 2 weeks. And in that 2 weeks, I'm able to have him retain, and he gets me into a mediation hearing. And in the mediation hearing, this is really cool too, negotiation tactics. They were never able to. So what a mediation is, they have a retired judge. His name was Judge Toth. I'd be in one room with my attorney is how it's supposed to work. And it's supposed to be at the courthouse. And I'm in one room. The district attorney's in another room. I'm with my attorney, and Judge Toth goes back and forth. Okay. I think I should get 8 years. Well, we think you should get 32. Well, I think I should get 10. I think it's basically like horse trading. Okay. Well, we couldn't get our calendars to line up to get it done at the courthouse, so she had to come to the county jail on Martin Luther King Day on her day off. Okay, and she's in there in her pajamas. The deputy district attorney, she's in there in her pajamas. She's absolutely pissed that she's there, and I can see this. I'm like, she doesn't want to be here. I've got 384 years. I've got nowhere to go, and she obviously doesn't want to be here. So I just kept dragging and dragging and dragging.
We discovered years ago the best time to buy a car is right before the staff leaves for a holiday weekend.
Yeah, it's like go, go, go.
So you're in that mode right now. All right, she's in her pajamas.
She's in her pajamas. It's snowing outside, and she just doesn't want to be there. And
solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 2 on a Thankful Thursday. Thankful Thursday. That's the one we don't name after a food because we decide there's a day set aside just to be thankful. In fact, I want to hear the sound effect again. Just start us off. Go ahead.
You got to be more thankful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. You're a gentleman and a scholar.
We thank you so much for this bountiful harvest of Domino's, KFC, and always delicious Taco Bell.
Have you said thank you once?
Thank you.
Thank you. My friend Chris May's in studio laughing right now, but that's our Thankful Thursday sound effect right there. Yeah, that's good stuff. Hey, listen, we're going to kick off a discussion with Chris May here momentarily. Let me prelude it by saying a couple things. So I named Dipper number 1 here, Trump World. This is a discussion about things that are happening on the ground right now in places outside the United States, but the influence of the Trump administration has really changed foreign policy. It has also shaped some of the dialogues and discussions. It's also been something that has been a precursor, if you will, to changes in the way nations do their work. And, oh, by the way, it's impacting conflict. We saw that most recently with the signing of a peace accord between the Hamas and Israel in Gaza. We're watching what's happening in Venezuela, where the Maduro regime is on its heels right now. But we've also got the ongoing conflict that's really, if you get down to it, is the largest force-on-force conventional style warfare in Europe since World War II. And that's the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. We've talked about it on the show so many times. A couple things I want to update you on, and I'll give you more on it in a little bit after I finish my conversation with Chris. But number 1 is the Trump administration just said that they are considering allowing Tomahawk cruise missiles to be given to the people of, or to the nation of Ukraine. That would be a game changer because that's a distance weapon. All right. That's something you can reach way behind the lines on, because right now Russia can tag them from anywhere and Ukraine can't do a thing about it. The other is that there is a new announcement that came out just about an hour ago that Trump is already scheduling a second summit with Putin to be held in Budapest, Hungary, we believe next month. So there is an open dialogue. He did have a phone call with Putin today. We don't know the content yet. They haven't released the transcript, but what we understand is they did indeed set a framework in place for another summit. The other is he's meeting with Volodymyr Zelenskyy tomorrow, the president of Ukraine, I believe at the White House. And so that will happen. But one of the things that has to also be discussed is what's going on with the current offensive, what's going on with Russia, and what's going on with the people of Ukraine. So I want to bring in my friend. That's enough of me talking. So my friend for many, many years is Chris May, who some of y'all just refer to as Boomer Daddy.
Yeah, Boomer Daddy.
Boomer Daddy.
Brings back memories.
Chris May has been my friend now for, 3 decades, Chris, I guess.
Yeah.
And
it's been a long time, Phil.
It has. It has.
Yeah.
You know where all the bones are buried in my life. But brother, you're currently on staff with Church of the Highlands.
That's correct. Yes.
But you also have had a long-standing ministry, and Charlene and I were proud to serve on your board for a while, called Mercy's Hope, which is a ministry in Ukraine.
That's right. Yeah.
And you just got back.
I did.
So pragmatic Phil is the one going, dude, keep your head on a swivel, brother.
Yes.
You be careful over there. At the same time,
you text that several times.
I did.
Yes, you did.
That's just my way. But I'm also praying for you while you're there.
Yeah, I know you did.
So let's talk about what you do with Mercy's Hope, what that is, and then dig into what you just got through doing.
Yes.
So Mercy's Hope.
Yeah, Mercy's Hope, Phil, really came out of my wife and I, Karen and myself. We went to Ukraine. Well, I actually did in 2004. God touched my heart. There's just no better way to say it, and impacted me so much that I felt like our next step was to adopt. And so after
Yeah.
Karen got on that, finally got on that bandwagon, and the Lord took us back in 2005. We adopted our daughter, Karina. She was 11 at the time, but we basically connected so much with the orphanage there that we got to know like upwards of these 80 kids that were at the orphanage. When we finally left with Karina, there was 70 odd kids crying and just crying out, "Mom and Dad, why are you not taking us?" And there started the heart of what God planted in us of Mercy's Hope. So after that, we created the 501(c) here in America, then began many trips to Ukraine where we really ministered to those kids. And today that orphanage is, in fact, about 8 to 10 years later, Phil, you know the story, but they had to close the orphanage because most of those kids were all adopted to Christian families or families in Ukraine. And that's just really part of the whole amazing God story of Mercy's Hope.
It really has been something. And I got to back up to something you said, because I have said many times that one of my favorite times as a state senator was passing a law that we named after your daughter.
That's right.
Because you came to me, I'll never forget this. You came to me one day and you said, "Hey, you're an attorney. Can you help us with the adoption of Karina?" And I said, "You've already adopted Karina."
Yeah.
I said, "She's got your name. She's a U.S. citizen. What's the deal?"
Right.
"Oh, no, Alabama is one of the few states that requires us to re-adopt." And I was like, "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard."
Absolutely. And
So-
that was actually 3 years into
Yes.
her being here. And we had to, I think, get her license or something that really brought
Birth
back to the
certificate.
home. Birth certificate. We renew her birth certificate. And we couldn't do it without her being readopted.
Yeah. So just a quick aside on that. We chased that rabbit for a second. I did get the chance to be the attorney for you in the readoption and go with you to court to do all that. But then
Yeah.
as a state senator, oftentimes you have assistants writing the law or the bill. I went out and researched it myself. I wrote the bill
Mhm.
and then, got a chance to go to the floor.
Yep.
Just the
Amazing.
coolest thing in the world. Argue
Amazing.
it, and then even drop an amendment on the floor and
Yeah.
name it Karina's Law.
Yeah.
And then when you came down and the governor signed it with Karina being there.
It was just fantastic. Now, it didn't help us any because we had to readopt her, but
I couldn't save you from that.
Everybody after that,
Yeah.
it was a new law where they didn't have to go through that process.
But you and I know some people like the Greers who adopted
right.
a little girl from China. And they did not have to go through it again because we
Right.
got that abolished under Karina's law.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
That's an aside. That's how much I love my brother Chris here. But okay, so you got this ministry to Ukraine.
Yes. Yes.
It also grew from orphanages. It was more than just that too.
It
There were
was,
other people
yeah.
who had great need
Mhm.
because this is a country that is on the one hand wealthy and on
Mhm.
the other hand extremely poor.
That's correct.
And I mean like ravaged with
Yes.
poverty.
Yes.
Um,
yes. And they'd been through it because up to 1991, they were part of the Soviet Union.
Right.
And then when the Soviet Union basically pulled out, or they divided essentially these countries, Ukraine was really left with nothing, because when the Soviet Union pulled out, they pulled out many of the resources at the same time, and so they had to start over. Basically, Ukraine did. And if you remember, that was back when our government had a major summit with the president at the time of the U.S. and Ukraine and Russia, and Ukraine had to agree to give up all their nuclear weapons,
right.
and we would come to their aid if there was ever any conflict,
Right.
and they did at that time, and so then they were a country that was not nuclear based after that.
But there's several things that a lot of people don't realize about Ukraine, and correct me if I'm wrong, but
Mhm.
My recollection is that Ukraine actually generates more nuclear power than
Yeah.
almost any other country
That's correct.
in Europe.
Mhm.
And Ukraine is also in many ways sort of the breadbasket of Eastern Europe because their agricultural is so strong.
It is. As a matter of fact, it's common when you're there to see the soil. It's black. It's not just brown, and it's in much of Ukraine 2 to 3 feet thick of topsoil.
Wow.
And so
That's
things
fertile ground.
oh my goodness, the produce there is just second to none, really, and it's an amazing country in terms of that. So really, up till the war, they were really ramping up their agriculture and beginning to make some really inroads worldwide as far as agriculture.
A lot of folks also forget that the recent incursion in the last few years by Russia was not the first co-opting of Ukrainian ground by
Right.
Russia. They had already seized the Crimean Peninsula, which I liken to it'd be like if Cuba decided to take South Florida.
Right.
They
exactly.
just took a whole section of the
Yep.
southern portion, which was their warm water ports on
Right.
the Black Sea.
That's
Black
right.
Sea.
Black Sea, Sevastopol, some of those. In fact, my wife and I have been there. It's amazing. Before they annexed into Russia the Crimea.
And that happened during the Obama era, I believe. So,
Yeah.
which is interesting. I said before, Ukraine lost ground on Biden twice.
Yeah.
Obama, Biden,
Right.
and nothing was done about the Crimean Peninsula being
Yep.
annexed by Russia and just
Right.
forcibly taken.
Yeah.
And then when Biden takes office as president, then
Mhm.
there's the invasion
Yeah.
to the east.
Right.
And you mentioned a minute ago, maybe we were off the air in Donetsk, in that
Yeah,
area.
yeah,
That's the eastern side, the
They call it the Donbass.
region.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where the major conflict is.
It
right
is
now.
right now. The whole east is and Russia has reinvaded, I should say, because they invaded in 2022. Then they pulled back, and Ukraine really pushed them back. Now they're trying to push themselves back into that area, and have taken some of it.
Well, we got to take a break right now, Chris. When we come back, what I want to do is dive into what you've seen. I mean, you've communicated constantly with people on the ground.
Yes.
But you also just went and put your own boots on the ground.
Yeah.
So I want to hear your thoughts, perspectives on everything you saw.
Absolutely.
All right, we're taking a break right now. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, in studio with Chris May, who just got back from Ukraine. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back.
Keep dragging and keep counter offering, and she loses and she says, "That's it. 15 years with the crime of violence. That's my final offer. No way with the violence in your crime and the assault cases that you've caught in county jail, these 2 extra assault cases, will I ever drop this crime of violence?" And so on a 32-year sentence with a crime of violence, you're going to do 24. Okay. So that matters. It's a huge, like, you're going to do more of your time.
Yeah.
And then on a nonviolent, you're going to do maybe a third of your time or less. Okay. So I'm heavy focused on that crime of violence. Like, okay, we got her down to a decent year range, and I don't know where this came from. It had to have been a God thing. And I looked at my lawyer. I said, "You don't tell Judge Toth anything." I said, "You walk in there to that district attorney, go tell her that, my client doesn't want to end up in he wants to change his life. He doesn't want to end up in a maximum security prison with swastikas all over his face. He wants to change his life. He's willing to give you a year if you drop the crime of violence." And the way their thing works is like, "Oh, I get 16 instead of 15, cha-ching." And all of a sudden all that, conviction about crime of violence just went out the window.
So she got a trophy, basically.
Correct. Yeah. And so I gave her the year, which is that's good for her. So she drops the crime of violence, and I get 16 years with no crime of violence is what I ended up getting sentenced to. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
That
I
is
was
crazy. You are into sales.
Yeah. And I was the happiest person ever to be sentenced to 16 years. Like, yay, 16 years in prison. But again, everything's relative when you face it to 32 or 384. Yeah.
All right. You said in one interview I saw with you, I've forgotten, it's some folks that you had known, but they have their own podcast, Emily and somebody else. I've forgotten the guy's name, the husband and wife team.
Chris and Emily, yeah.
Yeah, Chris and Emily. But at one point you said in that solitary confinement where you began having that epiphany about accepting responsibility for your own actions and you're not a victim of that, you felt like God had thumped you. But you still weren't there yet.
Yeah.
But then you started meeting and hanging out with a guy who, in your words, what I saw was he began to drop seeds of the gospel in your life.
100%.
And was that in prison? Was that in county jail? Where was
Prison.
that? That was prison.
Yeah. So here I am. God thumps me on the head and shows me it's my fault.
Right.
Shortly after that, I get into this negotiation hearing.
Right.
My heart's softened to the idea of God and him working in my life.
Because he has been.
Because he has been. And then I get 16 instead of 32, so now I'm looking at getting out in 5 years instead of 24 or never. So I knew God had moved. And so I'm like, okay. But I was always open to God. I always prayed to God. I always knew that God was real. I had some experiences in church growing up that were like bad experiences, but good experiences. I don't know how to really describe it. Like these people had something that I wanted, but I also saw how judgmental and kind of hypocritical that they were. Yeah. And so I was just like, but I knew that God was real. And so I prayed. Like when I was a kid, I prayed. Through my addiction, I prayed. When I was a fugitive, I prayed a bunch. And when I was in county jail, I prayed even more, wondering about what my sentence. So I knew God was real. But I didn't understand how Jesus factored into it. And no one ever really taught me about Jesus. So I was agnostic. I knew that God was there, but I didn't understand how it worked, right?
Yeah.
And so I get to the first prison I get to is called Huerfano County Correctional Center, which is in Walsenburg, Colorado. You go in there. You got in Colorado you wear greens, and so you got your greens on, and you've got a couple extra pairs of greens and a couple pairs of state issued underwear, like a cup and a spoon, and you walk into your unit, and the thing slams behind you, and you're now in your unit. It's got 120 guys in there. And you're like, okay, what's about to happen? Because the new guy comes in, fresh fish, and here comes this big, huge dude with a Semper Fi tattoo on his arm.
Oh, former Marine, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, always a Marine, they say. True. I've made the mistake of calling him a former Marine and been corrected 17 times. So, he walks up and reaches out and shakes my hand. He says, "My name's Charles. I'm a Christian, and this is a faith pod." And so all the movies that were going off in my head about the doors slamming and someone coming up to stab me having to fight to see if I was tough. Like there's all the things that I thought could have, would have, should have. But this big burly huge dude who definitely could have beat me up is like, "My name's Charles. I'm a Christian. This is a faith pod." That wasn't on the, on the bingo card. That's correct. Not on the bingo card. Yep. And I'm like, okay, Charles, what is a faith pod? And he goes, "Man, we do discipleship in here. And, we do Bible studies, we do discipleship, and I take seminary classes on the weekends." And
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just saving the world one soundbite at a time. All right, going right back with my friend and brother in Christ, Chris May.
Yeah.
All right, Chris. So you just got back from Ukraine.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about the mission going over there. You had multi purposes for going.
Yeah, it was really two parts.
Yeah.
And the first part was it really had to do with my involvement as being a pastor at Church of the Highlands. We went over for a church and a ministry help with many of the churches in Ukraine. We invited pastors and their families, particularly the pastors and their wives, to come, and we helped them with what we call Grow Leader Conference Global. And so we help them with many aspects of growing their churches, basically.
Yeah. Equipping them for their pastoral care. Yeah. But also loving on them too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
At some point.
Well, and that was one of the things that I enjoyed so much was meeting with these pastors and their wives one-on-one and being able to minister to them.
Well, I want to make sure that the audience hears that, because what you're hearing there is an Alabama-based church, Church of the Highlands, where I've been a member for a number of years, and Chris too. And I like to say we had the first bootleg small group in the Gadsden area.
That's right. We did.
But there's ministry going on directly impacting the lives of people in Ukraine from our churches in Alabama.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely right.
All right. That being said, you also went there with Mercy's Hope.
Yeah. So the second part of that trip, the second week, I end up going to our base of operation, which is pronounced, it's translated yellow water, but it's Zhoty Vody. And that is where we've had our ministry now for close to 20 years.
Yeah.
And so the purpose of that trip was to encourage, we have a house there where there's 4 girls in that house, was to encourage them, plus the churches and the many people we knew in that whole region.
Yeah, that house has been a place for people to get a second wind, so to speak, in many ways.
That's right.
I remember when you first acquired the property, and So I got to ask you too, as you go over there, I mean, what's it like going to a war zone? Every time I've been to a war zone, I've been in uniform.
Yeah.
So, I mean, can
Yeah.
you get a rental car and just drive around and do what you got to do? I mean,
that was the thing that it was just so amazing, Phil, because they have been in war now 3.5 years. And when the air raid sirens would go off, I mean, this would happen multiple times during the day and many times at night. Everybody was about their business. They just kept walking down the street, going to the grocery stores. Kids were playing in the playgrounds. And this was even the small part of my trip was actually a trip to the front line, what they call the Donbass region.
Yeah.
And that was very surreal. But even people there were just almost oblivious to the war.
It's amazing what you can normalize to.
Yeah.
I saw that in Baghdad.
Yeah.
There would be something would blow up and the shop next to it wouldn't even shut down. And it's amazing what people will become familiar with and just rock on, so to speak. But I'm sitting here during the break, by the way, and is that an Apple Watch you're wearing?
Yeah, I've
so
got an Apple
you've
Watch.
been an Apple guy for years.
I have.
So his Apple Watch just like chirped or something or vibrated,
yeah.
and he goes, "Oh, look, there's an air raid in Ukraine right now."
Yeah.
He has an app on his phone telling him when there's air raids.
Yeah. In fact, my wife has said, "Well, can you turn off notifications because it happens at night multiple times?"
Oh wow, yeah.
And even a voice comes on and says, "Find shelter. Don't take this. Take this serious." She's like, "Chris, can you turn that off?" But it just reminds me of what's happening over there.
Yeah, something to pray about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of which, you're there, and we're going to talk about what you did and what you saw in great detail. But I want to make sure I'm clear too.
Yeah.
You were not out of danger, so to speak. You were in places where there were drone attacks and things happening.
Yes, constantly. As a matter of fact, the house we were at, which the city has not been under direct attack, which praise God has been the fact for 3.5 years. However, when I was there, I had heard the previous trip a year ago, some things sounding like bad motorcycles, which were the drones going overhead.
Yep.
Well, this time I heard the same thing. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is a drone outside our house. So my window was open and I thought, okay. So I kept doing what I was doing. And then I heard it. I heard the,
yeah.
So I ran to the window and I saw the tracers going up and really close to us, but heading right up into the blackness. And I thought, oh my goodness. So I went to get my phone, but just so I could record some of that. And then it happened, an explosion that rocked the house. And from the inside, I could feel my insides just shaking. And I thought, oh my goodness, we're in the middle of it. This is real stuff.
Yeah, you were there.
Yeah, I was right there.
Which, by the way, I guess it's also fair to point out that that you're not on an army base, because what's happening a lot of times is the Russians are targeting civilian infrastructure.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly right.
It's not like they're targeting troops.
Yeah,
they're going after power stations,
right?
Apartment complexes, hotels.
I saw it firsthand.
Hospitals,
orphanages. I mean, just anything.
Orphanages.
Yes.
This is sick.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. We're taking a break again. This is going by so fast. All right. We're taking a break again. We're going to come back in a minute and start getting more detailed perspective, but I want to hear about the morale of the people itself.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. I'm with Chris May right now in studio, and y'all, I got to tell you, his perspective is not what you're going to hear anywhere else. You can watch Fox, you can watch CNN, you can see all the stories, what the politicians have to say. Nothing beats having somebody who's had their feet walking on the terra firma in the war zone itself tell you what they saw. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
We do praise and worship every single morning. And they did. And
he's saying words you don't even know.
Yeah, and I'm like, I have to get out of here immediately. That was my response to that.
Put you in the cult ward.
Get me out of here. You ever seen Happy Gilmore when anyway, there's the scene with the lady in the old folks home where she falls and get me out of here. But that's how I felt. I was like, I gotta get out of here. But it's prison, and it turns out you can't get out of there. Who knew? And so I was stuck, and it was a good thing. And Charles really just became my friend. He didn't browbeat me. He didn't, he wasn't over the top. He was my friend, and you get in there, you don't have coffee, you don't have soups, you don't have, sweats, you don't have any of that stuff. And so he gave me, all those things. Like, here, you need some of this, you need some of this. Hey, if you need anything, let me know. So he just became my friend, and his conversation would turn to a subject or a situation. He would kind of Socratically ask me questions.
He would weave Jesus into it.
And he would weave Christ into the questioning and say, have you ever thought about this? Have you ever thought about that? And I remember one of the funniest ones he did was, this is pre-saved Brian in prison, okay? And I'm talking about, girls and having sex with girls and all this other stuff. And Charles just looks at me. He's like, but wouldn't it be like so much more beautiful if like you just didn't have sex again until you got married? And I died laughing so hard and just pointing at Charles like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. But you know what? Flash forward, that's exactly what I ended up doing.
Yeah.
And it was because of that question that happened before I got saved that Charles did. So or go ahead.
No, I got to say, part of my weird resume is that I spent 7 years in full-time ministry with an organization called Young Life.
Yeah.
Which is headquartered in Colorado Springs, by the way. I spent time in Springs because of that.
Yeah.
Love that city. Probably back when you were actually messing up things. But we called it relational evangelism.
Yeah.
It was earning the right to share your faith is what we called it.
Yeah.
And it was not relationship, with a catch. It was relationship with purpose. And also, oh, by the way, if you don't love Jesus, I'm still going to love you.
Yeah.
So it was true friendship, but we earned the right to share our faith, we called it. And there's a passage of scripture just came to me while we're sitting here talking, hearing you say it. I believe it's in Thessalonians, 1 Thessalonians. It says, because we loved you so much, we were content not just to share the gospel, but our very lives as well.
Yeah.
Meaning the gospel's really important, but I'm even going to share who I am in a relationship with you. That's where Charles was, it sounds like.
Yep. 100%.
Very cool. All right, so you're hanging out with Charles.
Hanging out with Charles. We're at Walsenburg about a year in. I don't remember exactly how it breaks down. He gets shipped to Sterling Correctional Facility. So I'm there on my own. Huerfano County Correctional Center in Walsenburg was a private prison. So it was like Corporations Correction of America, or I guess they call it some other company now, Core Civic. It was one of those prisons, and it got shut down. And so I get moved to Benton County, which is another Core Civic prison. It was Corrections Corporation of America at the time. I'm there for 6 months, and then they moved me to Canyon City, to Arrowhead Correctional Center, which is like Camp Cupcake. Okay. And so they moved me to Camp Cupcake, and they didn't know they made a mistake with my sentence and how much time I have. I'm not allowed to be at Camp Cupcake, right? I'm not supposed to be. And I'm there for like 2 months, and it's up in the mountains in Canyon City, Colorado. I'm like, man, I can get used to this. It was like God gave me a little vacation. And then once they figured it out, they ended up shipping me to Sterling Correctional Facility. I walk out on the yard at Sterling Correctional Facility, which is a massive prison, right? There's 4 separate yards, so I didn't have to land on the yard with him. But I walk out on they call it the 20s yard where I was, and boom, there's Charles.
How about that?
Right away. So
back together again.
Yeah.
Pick up where you left off.
Yeah. And he was a softball coach. That was his way of doing evangelism. He put together a softball team, and it was like, is it, I remember how shocked I was when I walked into a medium security prison. So there's like killers and everything in this prison. And there's a softball team, which requires these things called metal bats. I'm like, they have metal bats in prison? Like, that seems counterintuitive.
Who thought this was okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he did. He coached a softball team, and I was the third baseman, and that was his way that he would evangelize guys. And so I get to Sterling, he's like, hey, what was great about Sterling is they had grass. So I was excited to play softball there, but that's neither here nor there. And so he's like, man, you want to play softball again? Yeah. So he's just doing the same thing, friends, ministering, planting seeds. And he goes, man.
Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. Goes like from Huntsville back on over to Chattanooga. And I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back on over to Gadsden. I mean, all the way down to that loveliest little village on the plains we call Auburn, straight across the line from there to what we call, once again, Fort Benning. Big old patches of North Georgia, Mississippi, all thrown in just for good measure. And that, my friends, is just the radio. That's just the radio footprint. Then there's all y'all out there in the whole wide world, going to the World Wide Web, logging in onto the live stream, looking inside the studio, audio and video, in places like X, YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and our website, rightside.media.org. And then, oh, by the way, there's all y'all that podcast the show. 363,000 downloads of the podcast of this show. That just tells us all of that, every bit of what I just said, that we can see where you are, and we know it. And the fact that you are is the reason why we do it. We appreciate you more than you can possibly know. It's not about where we are. It's about the fact that you're there. So thank you very much for being Rightside Ruffians. All right, I'm going right back now to my friend Chris May, who's in studio with me. By the way, Chris, I gotta interrupt the flow real quick.
Okay.
Jeff from Indiana just texted in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Jeff from Indiana, our truck driving buddy who's listened to the show for years. He remembers Boomer.
Oh, Boomer.
Boomer Nathan, aka Boomer, is Chris's son. He wants to know. So, how's Nathan doing? You can't have his dad there without telling everybody what he's up to, how he's doing. So, give us a 30-second on that.
I tell you, Nathan, Courtney, and the whole family are doing fantastic. As a matter of fact, they have moved almost a rock's throw from our house. And it is so amazing. I've got 2 grandkids, and we're enjoying every baseball game, every dance class. It's just nonstop, and we love it.
All right, get out of my studio. My grandkids live away from me right now,
bro.
All right. Hey, let's go back to this conversation about Ukraine. And you were just there, and you were there for close to 10 days. It was travel involved. I guess it was more like 8 on the ground, right?
Well, actually, it was more like 10, 11 days with a couple more after that.
Okay.
Travel. Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess one of my questions is, from the time you were there before, the last time was about a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
Was it changed in some ways? Was it still roughly the same?
In some ways it had changed. It was, I wouldn't say fear was more prevalent. However, seriousness was just because of what they've been through. I mean, when I went about a year and a half ago, there was a lot of hope that not only were they making inroads and pushing back the invasion, but also that countries like America were helping out. But it's relentless there. And what's happening is, and this is all public knowledge, but it's not official. However, it's known that Russia has lost at least 1.2, 1.3 million.
Yeah, it's been catastrophically
bad. It is. And Ukraine is probably about half that. Now, again, it's not official, but and so they can't keep up with that meat grinder, and at the same time, they keep pushing and pushing and relentlessly and just unimaginably targeting everything.
Now, some of the places you were at, like you said in Yellowwater, you said that the war hasn't targeted Yellowwater
Correct.
Per se. So there are enclaves of places that have not been struck by bombs or drones.
That's right.
But you also went to more of the frontline areas, and I have heard that the devastation there is on scale with World War II.
It is. I had an opportunity to go for a whole day with a pastor friend of mine that's actually a chaplain, and he has been going to the front line really since 2014, when you mentioned before the invasion and the excursion of the annexation of Crimea. And so, but he's has picked up that support to the front line and to the soldiers at least 2 times a week where he goes. And so he invited me to go with him to the Donbass. We were within mile-wise 4 to 5 miles from the actual fighting on the front line. Yeah, it was very surreal.
The level of devastation being one thing, but what's the morale like? And I want to ask you, like, too, you interacted with troops while you were there, too.
I did.
And I know you told me off the air you were struck by their professionalism.
Yes.
But what's the morale like of the troops, and what's the morale like of the people on the ground, let's say civilians?
Well, obviously we don't see the ins and outs because we just saw them isolated events or isolated encounters. However, every time we had an opportunity to meet the soldiers, to speak with them, to pray with them, which was a big deal, we never at all were refused. They embraced us, ministering to them, praying for them, believing for them. And these were soldiers, but there was also commanders. I think we might even had an encounter with a general. And so every single one were embracing not only the support we brought, which was just incredibly received well, but also just us being there and praying for them. Yeah.
What when you say that, you talking about the soldiers? You talking about the civilians?
The soldiers.
How about civilians? What's the date? You mentioned sincerity. There's more seriousness now than there was. Is society gloomy, or is the society still remain hopeful?
Hopeful. I would say it's probably a little less hopeful, simply because to them it seems like a war of attrition, which they're not going to be able to keep up with this war of attrition because of just the losses. And it was very sobering being in the city I was, because they have started in the middle of the city, the memorial to all the soldiers, and had pictures of all of them. And they said that was maybe about half of what they actually had lost in Ukraine. And it turns out the city that we're located in is not really very close to the size of Gadsden. And so there were hundreds of men that have been lost from that city.
Yeah, probably not a place in the country that hasn't been touched.
Correct.
By this. So what physically did you do? I mean, when you were there, I know you delivered, there's a vehicle, if I'm not mistaken, you delivered for them to use for taking aid to the troops.
Yes, that was actually back early 2022. Okay. We provided a vehicle through our ministry, through Mercy's Hope, to this church and to this chaplain. Since they have used the guts out of that vehicle. I mean, my goodness, it was a pretty new van back then, and they have used it. But he said they couldn't have done this without that. And so, but what happens is, what we did, we took many supplies, food, just a lot of different support items to the troops. That's what I was really taken back by, was the troops they had gear, they had weaponry, but they didn't have the support items because of the cost of the war. And so they're depending on the people of Ukraine supporting them with food and goods. And we took mattresses and clothing, just all kinds of stuff. And what's happening now, I said they looked very professional. I mean, I told you before, they looked so familiar to me of U.S. soldiers, the way they were outfitted and how they handled themselves. But at the same time, now they're asking the soldiers to wear civilian clothes because of the drone warfare.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. But I'll say this too, before we go to the break, we got a couple more minutes. One of the things that's been so impressive as a military guy myself, and there's a lot of sentiment in the political world about what level of involvement the U.S. should have, or whatever else.
Yeah.
That aside, there has been an amazing amount of just butt whooping put on the Russians by Ukraine.
Yeah.
I think everybody thought, and Russia thought, this was going to be over in a matter of days.
Right. Right.
And here we are 3 years later, and there's 1.2 million Russians that have sacrificed themselves on the altar of trying to take Ukraine.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And to really kind of give maybe a little bit of vision behind the curtain, if you will, we would go into these centers called volunteer centers, where they were providing food and many things for these troops. And on the walls were all the patches, the thank yous from all these different troops that would come in, soldiers. They would take off the patch and put it on the wall. And there were a bunch of American flags.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I'm like, well, there you go, USA.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So you're there on the ground.
Yeah.
And then let me ask you this, what's God doing there right now? I mean, I hear and I sense that in America, we have a growth right now moving towards, some say revival. And I'm praying that way. But what's your sense of the perception, the reception of God on the ground in Ukraine right now?
I think, and this first week really proved this, that I met with probably close to a dozen, not just seasoned pastors, but young people that were pastors, they had families, but they weren't saying, we're leaving so we protect the family. We want to invest in not only our community and those that are in our cities, we want to reinvest in our country. And we know God is not done with Ukraine, and we're going to do everything we can to not only care for those that are here, but also propagate the kingdom of God here. And so they are so passionate about the move of God that's happening in Ukraine.
Wow, that's and that's good to hear.
It is.
Are the people? I know you met with the pastors. Are the people turning back to faith in the course of all this? Sometimes crisis can drive people there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I think we're seeing that, but it's just so sobering to them because of just what they've experienced over the last 3.5 years. And so they're holding in one hand the hope that is God, that he is the God of hope, but in the other hand, it's the realism of their loss. And so they're trying to balance both of those.
In this world, you will have trouble.
Yep.
All right, brother. Listen, I got to ask, what do you think is next for Ukraine? What if you had to just give the Chris May prediction? You've been on the ground, but you're also an American back here watching the news.
Yeah.
I mean, you see things from different angles.
Yeah.
What do you think's coming? I mean, with this whole thing about Zelenskyy and all of it.
Yeah. I just in my heart, I believe that Russia is just not going to decide they're going to be a peaceful nation now and give that up. I think the main answer is going to be strength. So if we help in some ways Ukraine portray that strength and have at least something that says, listen, if you want to go toe to toe again, it's going to cost you more. I think that's the hope, to be honest with you. Yes, peace talks are great, but with the devastation I saw over there and what they've actually done and continue to do, I don't see in any sign of them wanting to have peace.
Russia.
Yeah. Now Ukraine, absolutely. They would take it now if it was handed to them.
Is Ukraine going to have to lose ground in a peace agreement?
I hope not. They say that they won't, but I don't know. And as a matter of fact, the Donbass area we were in is rich with minerals.
Yes, it is.
And so that's another reason, one of many, why Russia wants that so bad.
Yeah, I've said several times, this was not a war about Russia being scared of NATO.
Right.
Because NATO was already on their doorstep.
Yes,
that's never been the real reason.
Yeah.
That's the political reason.
Yep.
What this really was Russia saw things across the border they wanted.
Yeah.
They wanted nuclear power, they wanted the agricultural base, and they wanted those minerals.
Absolutely.
And they wanted geography. They wanted warm water ports in the Crimean area. And so and they also want the old Russia back. They want the former Soviet Union back.
Yeah.
Well, brother, this has been good.
Yeah, I tell you, I wish I could go into detail, but maybe that's another time.
Well, we will have you back on again, but your perspective is huge, and I'm waiting to watch and to see what's going to wind up happening with these meetings over the next couple of days.
Yeah, I've lost touch, so I'm excited to see what's going on as well.
You've been seeing it from that on the ground perspective. I'll never forget being in Baghdad and being in a chow hall.
Yeah,
and CNN. We knew CNN was on our area, so chow hall. Well, literally, I'm in a fob in Baghdad, right?
Yeah.
And the TV's on though. We get CNN International on a satellite in the chow hall, and they told a story about my area. And we all looked at each other and said, are they the same area we are? Because like 5 good things had happened the day before, and all they could talk about was everything negative.
Yeah,
and we're like, did they miss that part? But so it's different when you're on the ground.
It is.
All right, man. I appreciate you as always, and blessings on you.
Absolutely. And Phil, I so appreciate you and the whole Rightside Radio family. They're fantastic. Ever since I started talking and sharing about Mercy's Hope, the response has been really good.
Tell folks where they can find out more about Mercy's Hope if they want to.
Mercy's Hope, that's MERCYSHOPE.org.
Mercy'sHope.org.
Yeah. It looks like Mercy Shop, but it's not Mercy Shop. It's Mercy's Hope.
I never thought of that before.
Yeah.
All right. Chris May, love you, man.
Love you
all right.
too,
We're
Phil.
taking a break. Last break before the hour comes to a close. You guys stay tuned. There's breaking news we'll talk about when we get back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We'll be right back.
You got parole coming up in a couple of years. You really need to get you some certificates for the parole board. I'm like, great. And he's like, well, I'm the chaplain's assistant. I can get you into some programs. And the chaplain's office was over all the programs, secular or otherwise. I'm like, cool. Yeah, get me in. And he gets me into them, and it's they're faith-based programs. And so I got in there, and I'm like, Charles. So I get
snuck
in.
that gospel in on you
He
again.
did. And but it was really interesting, and I get in there, and the first program was like kumbaya, come as you are. You know, it was very, you know, it was not very high theology. It was not rigorous. It was just like, we want to love on you. But in that program, there was like 5 or 6 other guys that were like Charles, guys who'd been down for like 20 years that were men, and they were steeped in the word. And I got around those guys, and I'm just like, geez, like I'm drawn to this, but I can't admit it. And so that program ends, and I went to Charles. I'm like, hey man, I think I need some more certificates for the parole board. And he's like, okay,
Wink, wink, nod, nod.
And so he gets me into this next one. Well, it was very high theology, and it was very rigorous, and it was very much, this is what the Word of God says. It's called The Truth Project with Dr. Del Tackett, which is Christian Worldview and Apologetics.
I got it written down. I was going to ask you about it.
So good. Like, I highly recommend everything Del Tackett does. Everyone should just go and look at all of it. I mean, he did Answers in Genesis. He does The Truth Project. He's got, you know, so many great things. Watch, you know, but what this one is Christian Worldview and Apologetics. You come in, you watch an hour-long video, and then you have an hour-long table discussion afterwards. And I would watch the hour-long video that was, you know, this is what the Word of God says, this is this, but it's like applying it to creation and politics and culture. And it was
giving you a base.
Yeah. And it was so good. Yeah, so good. But when you're not a Christian, it's not so good, right? And so I'm like, this is bullcrap. I hate this. You guys are stupid. And I did. I told those guys at the table, if you believe this crap, you guys are idiots. You're stupid. And I always tell people, it's like, just because they're Christians doesn't mean they're not convicts, okay? And so, like, you tell someone, even us, like, if someone came up and, like, put their finger in our face and said, you're stupid for believing Jesus, I don't know. I hope that I wouldn't punch him in the face, right? But so here I am in prison doing just that, and Charles is just done. He's just, like, throwing his hands in the air. He's like, oh, my gosh. And so this goes on for, like, 2 or 3 weeks where I'm, like, full tilt arguing with these guys. And we walk back to the unit. And, you know, so here's the education building, our unit's over here, and there's a sidewalk that you got to walk around like that. And we're walking back, and we get to about right here, and Charles just looks over at me, and he says, Brian, why don't you give him a chance? Why don't you give him a chance? Jesus being to give him a chance, right? And for whatever reason, in God's sovereignty, as I look at it, that was the moment, okay? And all my guard, all my, you know, defensive mechanisms, for whatever reason, I just said, okay. And kind of as I said earlier, I knew God was real, but I didn't understand Jesus. And he's asking me to give Jesus a chance, not God, but Jesus, which was different. I said, okay. So I went back to my cell and prayed, as I often did. And I said, God, if I need to believe this Jesus character was truly your son, these were my problems with Jesus, okay? And it turns out they're pretty big issues. Said, if this Jesus character was truly your son, that he was born of a virgin, that he lived a perfect, I'm scoffing as I say all this, I'm like, he lived a perfect life, that he died and his death did something for me, that he rose from the dead. God, if I need to believe that to be okay with you, I need you to show me something, because I'm having a really hard time with this. So I go to sleep that night, and I have a horrible, horrible nightmare. I mean, it was a crazy nightmare, and I still remember, like, a lot of it, which is crazy, but it didn't make a lot of sense what was happening in it, like fat, flashing faces. It even felt demonic. Right.
Well, it probably was.
Yeah. And I'm falling off of a cliff at the end of it. And right before I hit the ground, I wake up, like when you're falling in a
like
dream.
real life wake up.
Yeah. Like
Okay.
wake up. Whoa. And the only thing I can see, it's completely dark in the cells. And we have those old red digital clocks. Right. And so the only thing you can see in the room when I wake up is the red digital clock. And it says 3:16.
Huh.
And the only Bible verse I've ever known my entire life is John 3:16. And it just, boom. Right, and that was the answer to my question, right? For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son, whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. You asked, I answered, buddy. It's Sunday morning at 3:16 in the morning. What are you going to do? I guess I'm going to church. So I did. I waited till 8, and I went to Christian services, as they call it in prison, because they have to be politically correct. Went to Christian services, and you know, I don't remember. I sat as far off to the back, to the side as I could with my friend Ramon that was on the softball team. Ramon's such a cool dude. He's a giant black dude, just yoked. I'm talking like waist this big, perfect six-pack, pecs this big, arms just huge dude. And I had this thing where, and it was a problem in prison. It's the Ned Flanders Christianity. I don't know if you know what I mean by that. If you ever watched The Simpsons, Ned Flanders. Oh, yeah. Okay, so like okie diddly okie doke, you know, it's like this soft kind of, you know, weak.
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just making common sense like a superpower. All right, so we're back. By the way, that conversation with Chris May, that was to me, that was a eye-opening conversation. What were your thoughts on that, real quick?
I mean, yeah, you don't get many boots on the ground perspective, so to say, like somebody who's actually been there and seen it with their own eyes.
Yeah.
So
he even told us stuff that we didn't get a chance to even talk about on air. Like during the break, he was talking about how some of the highways and roadways through the Donbass region, because the drone attacks are so incredible, they're actually stringing netting over the roads. So you're driving under a tunnel of netting.
Yeah.
To try and prevent drone attacks on vehicles. It's just
can't
amazing.
imagine.
Yeah. And by the way, this is not like some third world, dirt hole like much of Afghanistan is. We're talking about a well-civilized, modern era Eastern European nation, which has some beautiful architecture, lots of infrastructure, nuclear power plants. I mean, it's a no fooling, not a third world country is what I'm trying to say. Hey, I got to jump on something, though, that just broke. In a few minutes, we're going to have Jeff Poor coming in after the top of the hour and talk about some things. But there's a breaking news story right now that former Trump advisor John Bolton, he was national security advisor for a bit of time, had a falling out with the president, was extremely hawkish. He's the one who apparently wanted to go to war with anybody. But the report is now that former Trump advisor John Bolton has been indicted on charges related to sending sensitive national security documents to unsecure sources. So what he basically did is, what I understand, is he knowingly transmitted classified documents for the purpose of then being able to write a book, is my recollection, to write a book and use those classified documents as sourcing when they were taken inappropriately from the secure sites where they were held, and then transmitted also to other people, which is an entire violation of the security and classification systems put in place. And he knows that.
From what I saw, he was actually emailing them to himself. So
is that what it was?
I saw somebody report that he was actually emailing these documents to himself. So the evidence is there.
Well, we've got an older article from New York Post that came out just about 5 weeks ago. Says that the federal agents had seized 3 computers, 2 iPhones, and reams of documents from his house during a raid, and revealed that it appeared that he had indeed been sending, where did it say here? Classified documents, national security files, sending them out by email to family members on a private server. And so that's a mess. And we'll see where that goes. He's 76 years old. It's a crying shame, but he also knew what he was doing when he did it. So there's that. More to come. John Bolton indicted 18 counts by a federal grand jury. I don't know yet what district that was in, but I'm assuming it was in probably the same one as James Comey in Virginia. More to come. Jeff Poor coming in next. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back.
Gay, thing, like a lot of Christians, they're like nicer than God and holier than Jesus. You know what I mean? It's just a weird thing. And so I always rubbed me the wrong way, but here's Ramon, this dude, anyway, I'm not gonna, he's not that guy. That's what I'll say. Right. And he was the guy that brought the blood gang from California to Colorado, cold-blooded killer, until God got a hold of him. And now he's like the prison evangelist. These young guys come in, and he was in Unit 21, which is where you go when you first get to Sterling. And then from Unit 21, you get sent out to all the other buildings. But they kept him in there, and these new guys would come in, specifically young black guys, and he would body him up and be like, this is the gospel. You know what I mean? And it was crazy. It was really interesting. So anyway, this is the guy that I went to go sit in church with, because I don't want to be around any of the Ned Flanders guys. You know what I mean? And I wasn't going to let Charles think that he won, And so I sit off to the side in the back. And I don't remember anything Chaplain Davis said. I don't remember what the sermon was on at all. But at the end, he says, all right, guys, we're going to do an invitation. I look over at Ramon. I'm like, brother, what's an invitation? I just knew he was going to be like, brother, that's where you invite Jesus into your heart. But that's not what he said. He said, brother, if you got something hindering your relationship with God, you can go down there and pray with that man about it. And he stepped aside because he already knew that God was on me, as they say in the South. I've learned some Alabama euphemisms. God was on me like a pack of dogs on a 3-legged cat. Anyway, so I walk the aisle, as it were, the proverbial aisle. Get down there. Chaplain Davis grabs my hand, puts his other hand on my shoulder. He says, Mr. Dawson, how can I pray for you? So look, chap, I'm not here to make any decisions. I just want to pray that God would soften my heart so the truth can come in, because I feel him working on me, but I'm fighting him with everything I have. And we get done praying, and he's just got tears pouring down his face. And Chaplain Davis is not a tears down the face guy. He's not a hugger. He's not a crier. He's just, he's a man, and again, I'm a man and I hug and I cry, but he's not that kind of man. And to see him weeping in front of 130 inmates, I was like, what just happened? And I count that the moment that God saved me. And so I leave there, and Charles gives me a Bible, Thomas Nelson, New King James Bible. Here you go. And I said, start reading the story of Joseph. And so I get back to my cell, and I start reading the story of Joseph, and I'm hooked. I can't get enough, feasting on God's word. And that goes on for about 9 months. It went on long past that, but about 9 months into me feasting on God's word, really just being shaped and molded by his word, loving it, feasting on it, it changing me. Mm-hmm. About 9 months into that, I look around, and all my friends in there have pen pals. They've got some girl they're writing, right? Yeah. And I'm just like, let's see. So I call my mom. My mom was running a Facebook page for me, and so what that looks like is she logs in, but the account she logs into has my picture on it, where I'm not in prison. That's my bait. Look, I'm not in prison, but I really am. And so she's running this Facebook page.
So your mom's catfishing for you.
She's catfishing for me, yeah. And we were very unsuccessful at first, and so I say, basically, look, don't reach out to these girls. They're from my bad past.
It's cool that your mom was doing that for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we reached out to all these girls that were healthy and went to college and weren't drug addicts. Well, I don't know if you know this about healthy girls who aren't drug addicts. They're not real big on writing guys in prison. So those, you have to pick one or the other. You can either have the unhealthy girl that'll write.
I've never studied that, but I can imagine it.
Yeah, no,
okay.
it's there. And so I struck out completely, and I said, okay, God, I can't take any more rejection. If you want me to have a pen pal, you're going to have to do it, because I'm done.
We're talking old school, write it down on a piece of paper, pen pal.
Yeah, no, that's it. Yeah, everybody in there, yeah.
Put it in an envelope, snail mail it out. Yep.
Correct, yep. And
the prison probably has to read your letter to make sure it doesn't say anything, right?
I think they read a lot more of the ingoing than they do the outbound, but it depends. Okay. If you're writing from prison to prison, they read both. They have some system. I don't know how they do it, but there's definitely people who wrote some stuff they shouldn't have that got in trouble, and I can't remember which direction the mail was going. But you don't seal it. Yeah. You put it in there and it's open. I remember that now that you say that, because I always say, oh yeah, I sealed it, but I actually no, you don't. You put your thing in there and you put your stamp on it and you drop it in the mailbox, and then they go through and open it and look at it and then send it out. So forgot about that now that you bring that up. So no one wants to write me. Said, okay, God, you're gonna have to do it. Told my mom I'm done. Whatever. And so I don't know, 2-3 weeks, maybe it was a month, I don't know, it goes by. I say, call my mom just to check in, see how she's doing. And she goes, hey, Brian, do you know this girl named Christina Ewan? I said, yes, ma'am.
You've known her for a long time.
A long time. So Christina Ewan, back in Derby, Kansas, where my dad was. So we grew up together. I was head over heels in love with her, all throughout middle school and high school. We went to 8th grade graduation dance together. After that was the first of many times I professed my undying love to her. And I always say that she gave me the Heisman. It was like, I just want to be friends. Just
friend zone.
Friends. And so I got friend zoned hardcore. And that went on literally from 8th grade to the beginning of 12th grade before I left Derby. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, if you laid out all my yearbooks from kindergarten to 12th grade and said you can pick one girl to marry, it's Christina every single time. She's like, oh, okay, well, so why? And she said, well, she wants to write you. Excuse me? I said, well, yeah, Christina wants to write you. I was like, does she know I'm in prison? Yeah, she knows you're in prison. Okay, well, that's...
Despite the picture on the Facebook page, I actually am in prison wearing greens right now.
Correct. And so that's it. So my mom's, catching the thing where Christina's thinking she's messaging me. So that's how that happened. So Christina is on Facebook, and Brian Dawson shows up as a suggested friend. And she's like, oh, my gosh, I haven't talked to Brian in 10 years. Clicks, sends a message. And then my mom's like, actually, this isn't Brian. This is Brian's mom. He's in prison. To which most women say, oh, dear God, and would run.
Yeah,
but
unfriend.
Not Christina. And she said, well, I'd love to write him. And so, again, I say, God, you're going to have to do it. and God did it, right? I didn't send her a friend request. We didn't reach out to her. She found me and reached out to me.
Yeah.
And my mom said, hey, this is what's going on. She said, I want to write him. So God did that. And so I got her address from my mom and wrote her the first letter, though. I said, look, I didn't get drunk and run somebody's dog over. Like, this isn't like some fluke thing. You know, like you hear about this weird guy that got thrown, like never did anything wrong. And now he's
Really
in prison.
for reasons.
Yeah, I belong here. I earned it.
Like real prison reasons.
Correct. And so I said, but God has saved me and I am changed. And everybody in here says that, by the way, but like I'm an open book and I'm willing to prove it to you. And she writes me back. And again, in my mind, she was, you know, the girl that she was in middle school and high school. I mean, she was just perfect, like in every way. She was going to go on and be married to a doctor and the 3,500 square foot house, the white picket fence, and 2.5 kids, and the minivan and the dog. You know, like that's where she was in my mind. And that's not where she was. And she wrote me back and she said, Brian,
The dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 3 on a thankful Thursday. We're thankful for you. Text lines are open, 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. Text it, call it, same number for both. But let me do this right now. What I'm going to do is bring on a friend of mine, a longtime friend of the show, somebody who comes on a regular basis. Yesterday, we would have had Grand Counsel with my friend Jeff Poor and Dale Jackson, but of course, I got stuck in court, so there's that. In the meantime, he is still the same guy. Jeff Poor, host of the Jeff Poor Show on FM Talk 106.5 down in Mobile at the Gulf of America, also editor-in-chief of 1819 News. Hey, Jeff Poor, how you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you for making time from the studio there. Hey, man, I want to run through several things. You and I were going to talk about high school athletics as much as anything, but there's been a couple of stories that popped, and I want to see what your thoughts are. First of which is still developing, but like in the last 30 minutes, it's breaking all over the news cycle that former National Security Advisor John Bolton has been indicted. Your immediate thoughts?
18 counts, federal grand jury. Maybe it's not a surprise. He even said he'd probably be indicted, but I don't know. Is this lawfare, or is this? I mean, really, this is the new normal. I'm not a big fan of all of this, but if this is the way we got to do politics in America, then so be it. You just hopefully you can't have two sets of rules and only one side, has the favorable set of rules. So, but just John Bolton probably played a little fast and loose here, and we'll see. But I would suspect the media are going to be screeching over the next couple of days.
Oh, they will. They already are. I've got 2 screens going. It's like you got multiple screens in your studio. I've got them going up here, and Fox has got one direction and CNN's got the other.
Yeah.
And you can always tell by who they bring on to be the commentator where that storyline is going to go. But I look at this and think, man, I worked in classified environments. I know you don't take documents home with you to help you write your book. You don't email things out of a skiff to yourself on a private server. So if he did all that, then you know what a chucklehead. He may be about to get some karma.
Yeah, and just to go so hard in the paint against the administration that will be prosecuting you. What'd you think was going to happen? So maybe not smart, but maybe he can become a martyr for the left, which is kind of strange. I mean, you go back 20 years to the Bush administration, and John Bolton his name was Dirt. Now he's going to be a folk hero.
Yeah, that's true. They hated him. He was a neocon. He was that guy out there. He was a war hawk. He was the one always marching the troops.
Halliburton, whatever it was at the time.
That big old mustache. He's always had that mustache too. Well, we'll see where it goes. Hey, other story though I want to talk to you about. I became aware of this right before I went on the air, so I've not even had a chance to see it. Alabama has got an open Senate seat with Tommy Tuberville running for governor. So the U.S. Senate seat being vacated by Tuberville has got I call it a deep bench. We got a deep bench of people that are running. Steve Marshall, current Attorney General, Barry Moore, a current very conservative congressman, Jared Hudson, former Navy SEAL, Morgan Murphy, former Trump aide and Tuberville aide and Navy officer himself. Who am I forgetting? Anybody in the
Rodney Walker, who I don't really know much about.
Okay, I'm going to let that lay. But anyway, that's a deep bench, I call it. But there's a poll that came out today that indicates that, like, all of a sudden, Jared Hudson is taking the lead in the current polling. Your thoughts on this?
So this is a Qantas survey, and just before going on air, I pulled it up. Qantas Insights. It is 1,050 registered Republican primary voters. They conducted it October 13th through the 14th. Published on the 16th, so that's today. But it was a text message survey, so we don't know, but they think they got the demographics right. 3.2% margin of error, 95% confidence. They polled Senate governor and lieutenant governor, and a little surprising: 27% for Jared Hudson, 24% for Steve Marshall, 9% for Barry Moore, Morgan Murphy and Rodney Walker at 2% each. And then 36% undecided. They broke it down. Let's see, it's weighted very central Alabama, 27% in the north part of the state, 49% in the central part of the state, and 24% in the southern part of the state. So there you have it. My reaction to the poll, I know the text message survey, and that makes it a little complicated. Some interesting others races in this one. At Tuberville at 63%, 4% for Ken McFeeters, other 11% and 22% are undecided. And then here we go, the one we've all been waiting for, Lieutenant Governor. Wes Allen leading at 26%, A.J. McCarron at 14%, John Merrill at 10%, Rick Pate at 9%, other at 4%, and Dr. Nicole Wadsworth at 2% with an undecided number of 36%.
Wait, isn't Andrew Sorrell in that race?
No, he's running for Secretary of State.
Oh, that's right. Sec State. Okay. Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. That
we're not done yet.
Oh, hang on. The number 2 and 3 in the lieutenant governor's race are not even officially in the race, and they're
right. Well, no, we got some more. Two other questions here. Did you know that this is gonna blow your doors off here? But 95% of those surveyed support Trump's decision to move the Space Command headquarters from Colorado to Alabama.
Can I have some applause for that? Because I think that's a news story we didn't expect to happen.
No, 95, and it's like 2% opposed it, and then 2% weren't sure or something.
Gosh, who's not sure? That's what I want to know.
Finally, the last question is: do you support the Biden emission standards? Now, this is among likely Republican voters here. Only 16% of those surveyed supported them, and 76% were against them. So there you have it. News you can use. Not just horse race politics, but Space Command and emission standards from Qantas Insights.
Well, Qantas, and I don't know anything about Qantas. I've never dealt with Qantas polling, but I am intrigued by the fact they do appear to have a pretty good spread. Known Republican voters, obviously, it's one side, but they went for, it's a primary race, so they went for statewide over 1,000 participants. So that's interesting. That's more. That's
a big old sample. Yeah.
Do you know what the questions were? Do we have the questions?
I can see here for Senate primary at the 2026 Republican primary election for U.S. Senate in Alabama were held today. Which of the following candidates would you most likely support?
And there was no push poll option. Like if you said Jared Hudson, they go, did you know that Jared Hudson's the only one who's not a pedophile? I mean, that's kind of, I've seen push polls be so bad.
There is this candidate background. I left this out. Question number 2 is, which type of background do you believe best prepares someone to serve effectively in the U.S. Senate? And then here we go. I'll read these because you'll find these interesting, I think. A distinguished military career with national security experience at the top of the list at 33%. At 30%, an experienced state-level leader with a background in law enforcement at 30%. A self-made business owner with private sector experience at 23%. A current member of Congress with federal legislative experience at 10%. A public figure with a background in sports or media at 2%. And finally, at 2% as well, a former official in a recent presidential administration.
Fascinating. This is fascinating. What they basically did was give you a little snippet of everybody's. Now, I'll be honest with you. The funniest push poll I ever saw was about me. When I was running for the state Senate, I got a call at my house. And they said, we'd like to talk to you about the race between Phil Williams and Larry Means. And I said, okay. they said, did you know that Phil Williams sends his kids to a private school so they can avoid having to hang out with commoners? That's exactly what they said. And I said, really? Tell me more. And they said, oh yeah. And they went on to tell me all kinds of mean things about me. And I finally said, this is cool. I want to talk to your manager. And I thought it would end up right. And then she goes, excuse me? I said, I want to talk to your manager. Okay, hang on. And no kidding, they put this guy on. He goes, hello. And I said, yeah, who is this? This is Bob. I said, Bob, where are you located? Michigan. I said, hey, Bob, I'm Phil Williams. And he went, oh, wow. Just like that. The poll was over at that point. But anyway, hey, listen, I want to switch gears. We got about 3 or 4 minutes and go to the topic we were actually going to talk about when I first called you and said, hey, can you come on? Let's go local here. Alabama High School Athletic Association. I call them the sports mafia. They had a meeting yesterday. I'm sure you're aware of it. They had a meeting yesterday, and it was basically to pressure, it appears, designed to pressure private schools who are participants in AHSAA athletics to get on board with their proposal about transfers under the Choose Act and all that. Where is this going? And do they understand the level of overreach they appear to be getting into?
I think they are totally misguided here. So kind of asking around, and I don't know where this comes from, but there's a suspicion that they think that the private schools are the force behind the school choice initiative in the state, that they're the ones pushing this, and they're the ones that are getting the legislature to take these kind of actions and put this language in legislation, or whatever it may be. That it is all a conspiracy driven by the private schools, which I don't think that's the case, because the private schools can recruit and do whatever they want with or without the Choose Act. So that being said, there's a gathering. The official word from the AHSAA was about classification, which if you're a private school and compete in the AHSAA, your student body population has a multiplier of 1.35.
Yep.
So you have to compete at a higher in a higher classification, because you aren't constrained by districts or whatever it may be. But the suspicion there was, well, no, they're going to be pushing on these private schools to try to get the legislature to back off their threats, and I think it's just totally misguided, Senator. But these guys, and I was like, there's no way they think that. There's no way they think that. These guys have gotten this far down this road by making all these miscalculations. You have to try to be this bad at your job with the AHSAA to get the governor and the Speaker of the House to sue you and have the legislature breathing down your neck where they're going to do something drastic in 2026.
I mean, this is like, first of all, these are sports people, so I'll use a sports analogy. The play calling from the sidelines is awful right now. They don't seem to have a grasp of what to do to regroup. They even went in at halftime and came back out with no adjustments. So they're just like floundering around and trying to act like it's the 1970s where they had all the authority in the world.
Well, my suspicion is that it's an organization run by a lot of former football coaches, and if you played sports, you know how that locker room is. You have a dictator. He is the guy. And they get around themselves and each other, and they seem to think that that's how the world works. But the world doesn't work like a high school locker room. It works like, we all get a say. There's going to be political retaliation. This is what this governor does. You get on her bad side. Ask the Veterans Department how that worked out for them. Ask any of these other people who've gotten on her bad side that she's had to fire or remove from a board or whatever it may be, how that worked out. And this is not a fight they can win.
No, it's not. The legislature's against them. I think the courts are going to be against them, and the governor's office is certainly against them. And we got to leave it there, my brother. All right, Jeff Poor, appreciate you, man. Thanks so much for being here. 1819 News and the Jeff Poor Show on FM Talk 106.5. Have a great day, buddy.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
All right, we will take a break. We will come right back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back.
I'm actually in Alabama. I got married and had a son, and my husband and I got divorced. And so she's living in Alabama with her son as a single mom. That's the letter that I got back. I'm like, holy cow. Well, in that letter, she's like, I just got saved 6 months ago. So I'd been saved for 9. She'd been saved for 6. And so we just started writing, writing back and forth about what God was doing in our lives, what the preacher was preaching on, whatever. And then she would send me Christian books, and we would read the book together, and then we'd write what we were like reading, and then we would send. It was a really interesting way to.
How long between letters?
It depends. Like you'd send it could be 5 days, it could be 2 weeks. Like the post office is, but it was sometimes like if you send it Monday, sometimes they got it Friday, but usually it'd be the following week.
Yeah,
it just depends. Yeah, and but it was interesting, and it's like we were like finishing each other's sentences like through written mail, which was really interesting. I thought that was pretty cool. And there was something else I wanted to say that had to do with the snail mail. Oh, I know what it was. So because she had a son, and we had kind of talked about, so we've reached this point where it certainly seems like there's a spark that is here that didn't exist when we were kids, but my stock cannot get any lower. Okay. Like I don't have a lot to offer.
It's not like you're taking her to dinner tomorrow night.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And certainly not a steak dinner. And so I'm feeling like something is happening, but when I was like a football player that everyone liked, I couldn't get her, but here I am in prison. Like, how's this going to work? But I just said, okay, I'm just going to roll the dice. And I wrote her and told her how I felt. I said, I feel like God's doing something between us, sent it. And it took extra long that time.
What year are we in right now?
So this would have been 2011.
Okay.
December of 2011, right. I think. Yeah. No, December 2011 is when the first letter happened. Yeah, that's right. Maybe it was 2010. It might have been December of 2010. I got saved in December of 2010. So somewhere between 2010 and 2011, somewhere in there.
Gotcha.
Yep. When we first start writing, but then we write for about 6 months, and then I tell her, maybe it's 4 months, 5 months. I say, hey, this is how I feel. She writes me back. This was one of those ones. So it took a week for her to get the letter, probably a week for her to write her letter, another week for me to get the letter. Like it was a long turnaround, and it probably was exacerbated by the fact that I'm sitting here with all my hopes and dreams wrapped up in what this letter is going to say when I get it, right? And they call my name at mail call. You've been in the military. You understand mail call. It's a fun time when they call your name. It's not as fun when they don't.
I would say.
Yeah, and they called my name, and I was like, ooh. And I saw it was from Christina, and I was kind of like, oh, God, And she said, Brian, I feel the exact same way, whether you get out in 10 years or 10 days, I'm going to be here waiting for you, whether, I know God wants me to be with you. I'm just like, what? Unbelievable. And she is, and she was. And the funny story about the book she would send me. So after that letter, I don't know, 2 weeks goes by, and I get a book in the mail, and I open it up, and it's like a book on co-parenting for like how to be a stepdad. And my buddy Rich,
holy cow,
my buddy Richie looks over and he says, that looks pretty serious, man. He might be in for the long haul. This is that's commitment there.
You said unbelievable a minute ago. It actually is. It's so unbelievable it has to be true.
Yeah, correct. I mean, it's just, and it's so funny. So I told you my dad's not a believer.
Yeah.
So here he is, his son, who is in the pit of a prison with no hope of ever getting out. Okay, not only is out now, but he's married and has a healthy family and is now the CEO of a multi-million-dollar media company, and on and on and on and on. Okay, and I'm like, Dad, how does that work without Jesus? And he says, well, son, you finally started doing all those things I told you to do.
Oh, well,
I said, you're right.
Okay.
Ding, ding, ding. You got it, Dad. But I said, okay, explain Christina. He said, son, I can't explain that. I said,
I was going to say there were so many things. In fact, I was going to interject, but I didn't want to stop your recitation of the story because I didn't want to interrupt those facts. But
yeah.
But they're like the big black guy who sat next to you the morning you got saved. His name was what?
Ramon.
So mine wasn't quite near as dramatic, but it was very similar. I mean, I was a messed up kid, but we started going to church because I live with my dad now.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad had what I called the thundering velvet hand. I mean, my dad was 6'4". He was the Army lieutenant colonel. He was the Vietnam vet. And if he said do, you just did.
Yeah.
He also was quick to tell me he loved me, had a different level of discipline. We had a household, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I'm going to church, have no idea who this Jesus guy is, but I'm sitting there one night on a retreat, and the senior sitting next to me, I'm in 7th grade, and the senior sitting next to me named Mitch Schaefer, I still remember him, and I just, sort of like you, they had an invitation. I had no idea what was going on, but it felt like something I needed to be a part of.
Yeah.
And so I actually looked at Mitch, kind of like you looked at Ramon, and I said, what's going on right now? What should I do? What do you think? And he said, And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just pulling pins on truth grenades. All right, so we're having this conversation. I call them the sports mafia. Yep, I don't care if you like it. I agree with Jeff Poore. I think the members of the Alabama High School Athletic Association are probably a bunch of retired coaches, and I bet most of them, if not all of them, are former teachers union members. Maybe they still are. And they're in the heyday right now. They are still trying to exert their authority and tell people how it's going to be. Well, I got news. It ain't working out very well for them. So if you're not familiar, I'll give you the quick and dirty of it. The High School Athletic Association decided it did not like the new school choice law. Why not? It's interesting because if you look at the new school choice law, which in Alabama is called the Choose Act, which allows a parent to have a say in where their child goes and get a direct cash benefit to take their child to school, which means tax dollars leave this public school where the zip code is and go with the child to wherever the child goes. It's really full-on school choice. High School Athletic Association hates that because in their opinion, it means there's going to be recruiting. You're going to have like, all the kids going to one school to play football. Oh my gosh. End of the world. Cats and dogs living together. Anyway, the law specifies that nothing in the application of this Choose Act, in other words, a parent makes a choice, shall be anything that can be implicated or in some way acted upon by the Alabama High School Athletic Association. Meaning, if a kid transfers to the school because their parents made a choice, guess what? That kid plays ball if they want to. Guess what? That kid's on the basketball team. They're running track. They're doing all the things. Why not? That's choice, right? So AHSAA don't like it. And so they put out the word. Guess what? It's not going to work. We're not going to let any child play who has just transferred in under the Choose Act. You can't do that. The law even names you. The law names you. You can't get in the way of that. They don't care. So now the governor and the Speaker of the House filed suit against the AHSAA. And that's ongoing as we speak. If I'm not mistaken, there was an injunction. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't the court enjoin them from being able to prevent the kids from playing?
Yeah. So as of now, it's the HSA has not been successful, and the Choose Act kids are now eligible to play. But from my understanding, like it's going to be settled for good, like eventually. But in the meantime, these kids are allowed to play. So
it's an injunction. Which, by the way, a court does not issue an injunction to stop something from happening or to prevent something from going forward, unless the people who are moving for the injunctive relief have what the law calls a reasonable expectation of prevailing upon the merits. In other words, the court looks at it and goes, I think the governor and the Speaker of the House could very well win this case there, AHSAA. So yesterday, an unusual thing happened that we'll talk about more after the break because we got some inside information on it. The AHSAA called in all of the private schools in the state that participate in AHSAA sanctioned sporting and called them in for a meeting. Pray tell, why would they do this? Why would the High School Athletic Association be calling, schools like, I don't know, name one, John Carroll, Westbrook Christian, Westminster, all of them. Why would they call them in for a meeting? Probably to put the screws to them. That's why. We'll give you the scoop on what we found out about the inside of that meeting. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hey folks, Phil Williams here. I want to remind you that Inspire Advisors is one of our sponsors, and they are doing amazing work. Look, I know this audience. You're the kind of folks who believe in standing up for your principles. You're good stewards of your resources. But what if the companies you were investing in don't reflect your values at all? Well, that's why you need to meet Paul Breyer and his team at Inspire Advisors. Because Inspire Advisors, they are experts in the field of biblically responsible investing. They can help you grow your bottom line while also be proud of what companies you're investing in. Inspire Advisors, check them out. Their website, www.moneypatternwealth.com, and tell them you heard about it on Rightside Radio. think if this is something that you're feeling right now, you need to go down there. And I've wondered many times, what would have happened if I hadn't sat by Mitch?
Yeah. It's like God knows what he's doing.
No way of knowing.
Yeah.
Because in my book, at that point, as a seventh grader, I'm sitting next to a senior in high school. It's like God, Jesus, Mitch. I mean, that's kind of the order of precedence here.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting next to number 3 in line.
Yeah.
So I asked him, had I been sitting with one of my seventh grade knucklehead friends, what would have happened? I have no idea. If you hadn't been sitting next to Ramon, would you have asked the question of the next guy? I don't know. No way of knowing, but God puts people in your life and your path just the right time. Your mom did a Facebook page of all things, which I'm sure was a thing. Maybe that was something you learned that other people were doing for but the fact that she did it, and then Christina, who, by the way, you're married to, and by the way, you have 7 kids.
Correct.
You're not just co-parenting your stepson, you're co-parenting all of your kids.
Yeah.
I've met your stepson. He's a cool kid.
Amazing. Yeah.
All right, we gotta flash forward a little bit here, just for essence of time. But you did get out. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all are talking about this show, this one. Listen, I'm not going to go through the whole footprint, but I'll tell you right now, we cover a bunch of the southeast. We cover a bunch of y'all that are watching us on live stream. And we also, oh, by the way, have a ton of y'all that podcast the show. I say all that to say, wherever it is that you gather up this show, whether you listen to it or watch it or whatever the case may be, we appreciate it more than you could possibly imagine. You're the reason why we do it. You're the reason why we get behind the microphone at all. So thank you very much. All right, I'm back on this discussion about the Alabama High School Athletic Association, which I call the sports mafia. And literally, I can't tell you how many times I never had a time in Montgomery as a state senator where the AHSAA came up in a positive light. Not once. I mean, we had things like, homeschoolers can't play sports, or private schools have to play one level up, or just it's almost like they were just like the gatekeepers of anything in it. Like, we're going to let it be old school sports and don't you ask for something different. And now that we passed the Choose Act, and oh, by golly, there's actually a law that says, hey, by the way, school choice is the law. And hey, AHSAA, you can't do a thing about it. They're trying to do something about it. There was a meeting yesterday. The High School Athletic Association decided to call private schools in for a meeting, I assume in Montgomery at their headquarters. And we got some insider scoop on how that meeting went. And JP's got the scoop on his desk right now. So give it to us straight, man. What happened?
Well, I won't say who this information came from, but an
insider.
Yeah, an insider. Yeah. Apparently this meeting was very tense. They called him. The rumor before this meeting happened was that, oh gosh, the HSAA is going to ask the private schools to just go off and create their own league separate from the HSAA. So the meeting happens, and the executive director, Harmon is his last name. He pretty much got up there and said, listen, we want to be together. We want to be all in one organization. We want to be one happy family.
Oh, now he likes the private schools.
But he goes, if you guys feel ever so inclined, it would really help us out a lot if you gave us some air cover and voiced your support for the HSAA. It would really help us out a lot. And he said, we're not trying to go against the Choose Act, but if we,
they are.
He said, we're trying our best to stick to the rules of the HSA and how they're written. But if we let private schools, use the Choose Act and their kids can play right away, then we're just going to get so much slack from the public schools claiming that this is just another thing that private schools are getting, favor over public schools. And we just don't think that'll be a great look. And apparently that's kind of when it got tense. Because then some representatives from the private schools at the meetings said that, look, whoa. The private schools get the lower end of the stick on everything. They brought up how on the board of representatives, there's only one on the board that represents private schools. And then also what was brought up was that Gulf Shores High School just had a $53 million facility built with state tax dollars.
Yeah.
So, apparently one of the representatives called the executive director of the HSAA foolish.
Have you seen the Gadsden High Stadium?
Yeah, right. So the whole we can't let the public schools think that we're giving private schools so much favor. It's like the public schools are the ones that are getting most of the favor in this. Was the reaction from the private schools, and I think that's true. So that was pretty much the gist of the like trying to bring them in and say, guys, please just be nice to us. Give us some air cover a little bit. We want to be one happy family. So we just pretty much trying to save their own butts.
Yes, exactly right. So what they were trying to do was they were trying to build their alliances real fast after the fact. Mm-hmm. And they're trying to build their alliances with people who they've notoriously picked on.
Yes. Yeah. And apparently there was a meeting after the fact with the private schools only, kind of like a recap meeting that apparently Will Ainsworth called into himself. He's been very vocal against the HSAA during this whole thing. So it looks like he's going to have their back. But if I'm the private schools, I'm not budging because you got the state legislature.
That's right.
The lieutenant governor, the governor, all on your side. And you just won that injunction, like you said. The HSAA is the one that's on their back foot and is going to lose in this.
But it's also not, if I'm not mistaken, it's not just private schools. School choice allows kids to move from one public school to another. You can get your tax credit to leave the public school you don't like or doesn't service your kids well and go down the road to the one outside your zip code, and you can use those funds to help you go and do that. For transportation, for whatever the fees might be. If there's a local, some kind of cost that you have to incur to be in that school district. And so all those things can help a kid travel from, say, I don't know, pick one, Woodlawn to Mountain Brook, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so they're concerned that kids will transfer to the better schools and suddenly play football or run track or play basketball. And I'm like, so what?
Yeah.
That's the school experience.
But they're just so scared to make it look like private schools are getting any favor. So they go too far to the other end where they don't give private schools anything. And then whenever the private schools just want to have a little bit, which by the way is a state law.
Yeah.
Then it's, they're so scared that the public schools are going to lose their mind because private schools are getting favor. It's like public schools get all the favor.
Yeah. And if you look at it, I don't think you'll find a 7A level private school. Mm-hmm. Is there a 7A level private school in the state of Alabama? I don't think there is.
I don't think so.
There's some good sized private schools here and there, like down in Mobile or in Birmingham, but most of them run at the 2 and 3A level.
Yeah.
And they're required because you heard Jeff Poor say a minute ago, the multiplier.
Yeah.
So if you have a population or a school census of say 1,000 students, they factor that by a 1.5%. In other words, what it takes to be a 1A, you're suddenly categorized as a 2A.
Yep.
And now you got to play schools that have a deeper bench. You may have a few kids you can choose from and one or two that have talent, and yet you're playing a school that has a much deeper bench to pull from, and you got to play up.
Yeah. And by the way, that was also brought up. The multiplier was brought up as another thing that's against the private schools. So it's just, in my opinion, that was a scared cover my butt, please help me meeting from the HSAA.
How long was the meeting? Do you know?
I don't know. I assume, every private school from the state had a representative there. So I assume it was at least like an hour long meeting, I would think, because several representatives, voiced their disapproval with the executive director calling him foolish. So yeah, that from, what I'm hearing is that this was a tense meeting. And I think what Jeff Poor said, the HSAA came out and said that this was about the multiplier or whatever. It was a lot more than that, so yeah.
There's people don't realize too, the AHSAA actually makes a lot of money off these schools too.
Yeah.
They make money off of like ticket sales at the sporting events, that kind of stuff. And not a little bit, they make a lot. Mm-hmm. And so first of all, they also shepherd who is in the AHSAA. And if you're in the AISA, which is an Alabama Independent Schools Association, you're not even allowed to play an AHSAA team.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of schools that choose not to be a part of the AHSAA who are then discriminated against, and they can't play the school that they can see from their front door. Exactly, like they can't play their actual true competition right over there in the next district. They are required to drive 3 hours to play somebody else. But the AHSAA just a couple of years ago passed a rule that said you're allowed to play across state lines. In other words, if somebody from Meridian, Mississippi wants to play somebody from Greene County, Alabama, they can do that, but they can't play 5 minutes away.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why if there were a private school only league, it would be so messy with having to drive 3 hours, like you
Oh,
said,
you
to
would.
play it.
You absolutely would.
I don't even know if they would be allowed. They wouldn't be allowed. They wouldn't be in the same playoffs. So it's like, so you're really getting the real state champion if you can't play the guy right down the road that was also undefeated like you are. Like it would ruin Alabama high school sports. But like I said, I think the good sign is I think the AHSAA knows it's on the losing end of this.
I would hope so.
Or at least they're worried about it because
they're worried about it.
They're calling in the private schools saying, guys, please be nice. They're like, say something nice about us if you feel so inclined,
I wonder if they really thought this meeting was going to build support or if they were trying to flex. I mean, what do you think? Was this a flex meeting or was this a, hey guys? I mean, what do you think?
I think it was a, hey guys, it would really help a lot if you, spoke nice about us publicly to get some of the press off our back,
I wonder if they could read the room by the time that meeting was over.
I don't know. I mean, if representatives are calling the guy foolish to his face, I don't know. It's, I think that the private schools just hold their ground on this. I mean,
yeah, the lawsuit's in their favor. You're right.
Think about how much work it took for the state legislature to get the Choose Act passed. And
I know.
It takes the AHSAA to feel that need to insert itself to ruin it for everyone. That is just, it's beyond maddening.
Yeah. Hey, parents, do you like choice? Guess what? You don't get choice as far as sports. I'm sorry. Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Thank you, Judge, for stepping in and providing an injunction. All right, more on this. We'll take it as it comes, but yeah, it's going to be an interesting dynamic to watch how this unfolds. But I really do believe that the AHSAA is a sports mafia, and I think their support is definitely, like, the days in which they were the king have left them. Text line, I get a few of those before I go to the break. Joe from Elkmont, he says, I got no sympathy for most private schools. They can grant scholarships to acquire better athletes, and most have college level facilities. I don't know where you're playing.
It's just not true.
That's not true. Mars Hill football stadium is equipped with a jumbotron and artificial turf on the field, plus only a couple of private schools can even compete with them. Well, Joe, I would disagree with that entirely, seeing how my kids went to a school that did not fit that category. And over time they built some facilities, but
yeah, but that's the narrative of why the HSA thinks they have to go against private schools.
That's the long held narrative that was actually not true. In fact, for years I knew private schools that had to play 8-man football because they couldn't field full teams.
Yeah.
But that's the only way they can have sports. Chris from Huntsville, Colonel, what is the mechanism that allows the AHSAA to oversee athletics? Are they a state office or what? They are, in my recollection, they are an association created by statute. So they are a governing body that is governed, provided some measure of authority under state law, and I believe because of that, they are given some direction and some authority, and maybe even some funding, if I recall. I'm not positive, but yeah, my recollection was they were indeed created by statute, and that's why the legislature is thinking it's time to revise their structure altogether. Mike from Athens says Phil is absolutely correct. LOL at Madison Academy.
I think he may have meant look at Madison Academy.
Look at Madison. Maybe it was.
Maybe, I don't know.
Or LOL. I don't know.
Either's the same. Yeah.
Shag Nasty the atheist coming on and says they're private and they want state funds. No, hard no. No. See, Shag, that's where you're wrong. It's not that they want state funds. It's that all those parents paid those tax dollars in to educate their child. So the question I have for you, Shag, is what do you think is more important? Do the tax dollars go to feed the system, or do the tax dollars go to educate the child? Because if they go to educate the child, they have to go where the child is. At the same time, I would also ask you then, Shag, what is your determination about who is best to make decisions for the child? The government, the system, or the parents? And I would say your answer to those two questions is going to determine how you really feel about school choice. Joe in Tennessee says the Bubba coaches don't realize that Paul Hubbard is dead, but still in charge. There you go. Paul Hubbard's teachers union boss for years and years. Yellow Dog Mike from Huntsville. He says, heard your riff earlier on Clarence Thomas. Was Anita Hill lying under oath? Yes. Remember the hair on the Coke can? Oh, come on. He said his best buddy is a Nazi memorabilia collector. Was JP on the Young Republican group chat? I wouldn't be surprised. Trump will be gone someday, but your dishonor will remain. See you at the No Kings rally. You know what? That No Kings rally is going to be more like a circus. Are you going to be out there wearing your G-string and your Puff Daddy suit? It's going to be fun. Yellow Dog Mike, always good for a laugh.
Just for the record, I was not on the Young Republicans group chat. But I would like to see the group chat that Yellow Dog was on after Charlie Kirk died.
I don't think you do because I wouldn't want those things going into your head.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, I don't think anybody should have to view that. Tom from Decatur says, sorry, no sympathy for yet another fired Trump cabinet member running to the liberal media for a national platform to bash Trump. That's John Bolton he's talking about. Last one, Mike from Coxie, Alabama, says, Colonel Phil, seeing all these indictments is pretty encouraging, but I still think the ringleader of all of these lies was Hillary. What's the chance of her being indicted just because she's the wife of a former president? I would say slim to none, but don't count it out. All right, we're taking a break. Last break of the day. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And you went to a halfway house, if I recall.
Yeah, it was an intense behavior modification program, most intense of its kind in Denver, Colorado, called Pier 1.
Yeah.
But it functioned as a halfway house.
Pier, was it?
Pier, P-E-E-R,
Okay.
1, the number 1.
All right.
Not the furniture store. Different.
No.
Yeah.
You're not buying like bing bag chairs there and stuff like that. All right.
No.
Yeah, I remember hearing you say, like you said a moment ago, that this was the most intense place you could go, that a lot of people didn't want to go there, but you did.
Mm-hmm.
But it also expedited opportunities for you to move forward, right?
Yeah.
And then you asked Christina to marry you, like on the porch of the halfway house.
Yeah, with this ring.
That's super romantic, dude.
Yeah, I'm a hopeless romantic. What can I say? But yeah. So the question that everyone's going to ask at this point in the podcast is, how long were you in? 5 years, 2 months. On a 16-year sentence, 5 years, 2 months, I was eligible to put in for a halfway house. Boom.
Right.
I never would have got accepted to a halfway house with my crime and criminal history and how much time I had, except that I put in for this extremely intense behavior modification program. And they're like, you want to go there?
Would you have gotten it if you'd had that crime of violence attached to it?
It would have been 5 years, 6 years later. So if I would have got the 15 with the crime of violence, which was what I ended up negotiating on, I probably would have done 8 or 9 years before I could have went to Pier 1.
Okay. Wow.
Yep. So it would have been about twice as much time.
Everything stacked up.
Yep.
All
and
right.
so 5 years, 2 months, the way that it works in the Colorado prison system with their time is on a 16-year sentence, they cut it to 8, and that's your parole eligibility date. So in 8 years on a 16, you're eligible for parole. And then on a nonviolent crime, which is why that sentence enhancer mattered, 19 months prior to your parole eligibility date, you're it's called community eligibility, which is to a halfway house. So 8 years, then 19 months before that, halfway house, and then that actually comes towards you with earn time. So on a 16-year sentence at 5 years and 2 months, that's your first eligibility to get out.
So, I mean, listen, I know that from what you said, Pier 1 is a serious intensive, but you're in a halfway house compared to being in a prison. So did it feel like a vacation almost?
No, prison's way better.
Really?
Yeah, prison is a vacation.
No
Like,
kidding.
and again, like, I mean, it's just a bit like saying prison's a vacation. It's not a good one. But from a standpoint of like, as a man now who has, a wife and children, and runs a company and has to make payroll and like all these type of things, like, you don't have that in prison, right? So it's different. It's like, yeah, you could get stabbed. That's not great. But like, if you know what you're doing, you're probably not going to. I mean, you can step on a landmine, but if you know your way around, you kind of learn how to do time. You can avoid the pitfalls and stuff like that. There's no responsibility, right? And so you're not burdening or shouldering any responsibility.
Wow.
Well, what makes a man what he is the weight that he carries on his shoulders. That's how you develop gravitas and become a man. And so I was never going to become a man in there. I did learn a lot. It did shape and mold, and I had to deal with things or whatever. And it was very good. I think it was good that I went there because it helped me become who I am. But my goodness, like when I first started like being a parent and being a husband and having to work and pay bills.
Wow. Yeah.
I was just like, oh my God, send
Real
me back
life.
to prison. This is insane. Real life is way harder than anything. Like, that's what no one ever tells you. Like, it feels like there should be a guy in high school who just sits you down and says, life is flipping hard. It's really hard. Real life is really hard. No one ever tells you. They just make it like it's not. So it's very bizarre. So
My daughter calls it adulting.
adulting,
I
correct.
remember one time she called me and goes, this adulting thing sucks.
It does. That's why so many people aren't doing it anymore.
All right. Okay, so how long were you in the halfway house? When were you actually like free?
2.5 years in the halfway house.
Wow, 2.5 years.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So in the intense behavior modification program, I'm there for the first 6 months. you're in phase 1. You're not allowed to leave. You're not allowed to go anywhere. You're not allowed to really do anything. You can't write. I couldn't write Christina, but she could write me, and she wrote me a letter a week for 26 weeks. Then I get to phase 2. Phase 2, you're allowed to get a job, but you can't go out on visits, so you can go to work. And so I ended up getting a job at a tax resolution firm doing sales. Imagine that. But I mean, there's so many stories, and I know we got time, but so I get to the point where there, but then about 10 months in, I'm eligible to now go out into the community and go on visits and like go see my family and stuff. And Christina flew out.
Are you in Colorado Springs?
This is Denver.
Oh, it's Denver. Okay.
This is Denver. And my grandma had moved to Denver while I was in prison.
Oh, wow.
And now she's back in Colorado Springs. But it's just like another one of those God things. Like she ended up being in Denver where I was, so it ended up working out. So Christina comes to see me, and we plan to get married the next day. So, right, we were wasting no time. The very first visit, boom, we're getting married. So she comes to see me on the front porch. So
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Making common sense like a superpower. John's got the grades in, so I'll tell you about those here. Let's see what we got here. John from Huntsville says, JP gets a solid A for his above-average performance. Above average?
I think it's because my Alabama-Tennessee comments to start the show.
There you go. Jeff Poor gets an A+ for his outstanding performance. Phil gets an A+ for his brilliant performance, which means today's winner with a perfect A+ for his absolutely magnificent performance is Boomer's dad. Congratulations. There you go.
I think that's fair.
That is fair. I mean, you come back from the war zone. I got nothing on that, man. All right, let me go to the phones because he's on there. You know who I'm talking about, Jeff Rowe from Indiana. Hey, buddy, how are you?
About 5 lanes of traffic moving 10 mile an hour.
Oh, well, that means I know exactly where you are.
Yes, you do.
Oh, my goodness. Well, then you're making about normal time right now. Sometimes you call us, you're already in Kentucky. That's fast time. Sometimes you're like still at the yard in Falkville waiting, and that's slow time. So you're on normal time right now.
Yeah, I keep waiting for you to bring one of them sky hooks in there and take me out of this mess. So I'll drop me across the border.
Oh my gosh! I've jumped the biggest helicopter in the inventory is called a sky crane. I've jumped out of a sky crane. It was quite the hoot. That thing's like a school bus with a giant rotor on it.
Yeah, well, it basically had a school bus, I guess, but had a troop carrier on the bottom of it, wasn't
it? Yeah, absolutely. Well, we talked about a lot of stuff today, man. We talked about Ukraine quite a bit with Boomer's dad. We talked about high school sports mafia. And then we have the John Bolton indictment. Give me your thoughts.
John Bolton. I have mixed feelings about this because, he deserves everything he gets and stuff. And he knew better than what he was doing. But if I was him, I'd be going in front of a judge saying, hey, I'm being selectively prosecuted here and everything. The Constitution says you're supposed to have equal justice under the law. And all these other people did the same things I did. Biden had all these documents and everything when he was a senator and stuff, and he doesn't worry about getting picked up about anything. And Hillary and all these other people did basically same things that he did, but yet they scooted because of who they are, but they're going to prosecute me because of who I am. I wish we had a fair justice system where if you go after one, you got to go after everybody.
I remember when I think you and I talked about it on the air one time because you brought up something similar to that. Hillary Clinton, she had the whole thing with her private server. She destroyed the server or had the server destroyed. They destroyed it with a hammer even and bleach bitted it so that you couldn't get the data off of it. And there's a real belief that she had classified documents on it at her house. At the same time she was getting off on that, there was a young guy who worked in a nuclear submarine in a naval base in Virginia, if I'm not mistaken, who thought it was cool where he worked. So he took a few pictures on his phone. Turns out those pictures were supposed to be in a classified environment, and he was prosecuted. So here you have the young skull full of mush in uniform gets prosecuted, and the lady running for president gets a pass.
Yeah, and then those she destroyed, subpoenaed, things. They subpoenaed
that's right.
Destroyed. So So how can somebody, if you're in a subpoena, I guess that you can just go ahead and destroy what they subpoenaed and say, well, I want this Hillary Clinton treatment. You can't arrest me for this, can you?
Well,
that's what just burns me up. It just is.
Meanwhile, Trump had to go through a raid at Mar-a-Lago and have everything done to him, and then then have the whole Jack Smith investigation, which wound up sweeping in all kinds of other people. And at the same time, Joe Biden was just seen as that kindly old man who, with a fading memory, who would not be able to be prosecuted for the same thing. About 30 seconds here, man.
Well, before he was a kindly old man, he took these documents when he was a senator, when it's
right.
very illegal.
That's right.
And nobody said a word. We're not going back after him against anything. I don't know what the statute of limitations is on stolen documents, but it should be from the time they figured it out.
Well,
when they got them.
These indictments coming down like this one on Bolton today. I think there's burn barrels in the backyards of people's houses in Alexandria, Virginia, all over the area right now. But got to go, brother. Be careful on the road, and blessings on things at your household. All right.
I sure do appreciate it, Bill.
All right,
man.
have
a good one.
You too, buddy. All right. You know what I always say, you guys, there are more of us than there are of them. God is still on his throne. Y'all stay in the fight. We'll see you tomorrow.